on to set number 2 here of 2 so far this day, and the last one of the Phase 3 playoffs. Of course, we just watched 5 fantastic games from the Kings and the Leviathans. I assume we're about to watch at least 3 fantastic games, maybe another 5 fantastic games between the Dragons and the Bolts. Of course, if you want to have your own set of fantastic games, you can do so by playing on an Alienware PC. Of course, the laptops are really good for anything on the go, but if you want to rock the games like the pros, you can play on an Aurora Ryzen R10 desktop the same way they are, or the 244Hz gaming monitors that they like to use. All of that of which you can find at SMITEgame.com/Alienware. Use code AWSMITE09 to make sure that you're getting some discounts. And of course, thank you to Alienware for powering the pros back there and making sure, sticking with us here in Season 9. And of course, if you want to, you can follow them on Twitter and Instagram at Alienware. You can go to AlienwareArena.com to join their global community for giveaways and, of course, a ton more. So fantastic stuff, fantastic computers, and a fantastic person on the desk with me. A nice analyst as well.
Oh my God.
And it's Mifflin, who you just got to listen to go through 5 games, and I'm sure like the energy still may be pumping up there. Now we get to watch the Dragons take on the Bolts. And again, something I think is very exciting for him. We had kind of mentioned it, but the difference between 3rd and 4th seed, honestly, maybe bigger than the difference between 1st and 2nd seed, right? Like the Kings get a win for a playoff event, that's big. But here it's the choice of having choice or not between these two teams and who can win.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this matchup as well. Feels like the Olympus Bolts have really found something recently. The duo lane in particular has been looking great. But the Jade Dragons have just been a consistent thorn in the side of every single team they've ever lined up against, especially in the last couple of phases, man. They have been hyper-aggressive on a day that just feels hyper-aggressive for some reason. Strange when the Leviathans and the Camelot Kings are both playing an early focused meta. Feels like the Jade Dragons, it's just a good day for them.
Yeah, and that's what I think. I'm excited to see what these teams have to offer, because you mentioned the duo lane for the Bolts, and that's actually where we want to focus in a little bit. Jake specifically, as of late, has been... I want to say stepping up, right? First off, catching a lot of bans at the very beginning of every game. Nox ban almost guaranteed so far in the Bolt sets this week. But yesterday specifically, it really felt like we got to see a new, kind of reinvigorated Jake than what we got to see through a lot of Phase 3.
Yeah, I loved everything I saw from Awesome Jake, man. Yesterday, I couldn't even help myself. I walked out after Game 1. I caught him in the hallway, and I said, Jake, man, you're doing something different. You're moving strange today. It is a very different look at him. Hyper-aggressive play, but he's cleaned up some of those picks that were happening to him early on or towards the tail end of the phase.
Yeah.
Has found a god that fits his play style very, very well. I think the commonality between Nox and Maui for Jake is that they're both largely non-committal in their initiation, and so that he's allowed to go a lot more consistently up to that front line, say, all right, let me toss out my fisherman hook. If I catch someone, awesome. There's going to be an island behind him. Or with Nox, it's I caught him with Shadow Lock. The boys jump on him, and it looks a lot better, man. Jake has really, really impressed me so far this week.
Yeah, a lot of, hey, guys, like, I got him. Kill that dude, and if it works, it works, and so it'll be fun to watch what we get out of the Bolts today, but specifically what we get out of the duo lane. We got Jake standing by for an interview.
Yeah, thank you so much. Jake with me here for our pregame interview now. Jake, I'll kind of open this one up with the win-loss record between you and the Dragons so far this season. 6 to the Dragons, 3 over to you guys. You looking to maybe make a change to that here in today's set?
I mean, I only remember beating the Dragons like last week, so like I don't know where the 6 losses came from, but yeah.
Well, maybe we can see if we can remedy that for your team, get a win out of here. Now, going up into the Dragons, we always talk about how this is a very kind of early game dominant team. We saw that maybe the answer from the Camelot Kings on their week was to take these guys a little bit to the later stages of the game, maybe have a better chance. Do you kind of echo those same thoughts as the Kings?
Yeah, I mean, our game plan going into the set is to like own them and be better than they are, like at Smite. So yeah, as long as we do that, I think we'll have like a pretty good chance of winning.
Now, one thing that the desk kind of brought up there was that you've been eating a lot of bans this weekend, and maybe kind of as of recent, been seeing a lot of the Ymir. Obviously, the emoji is kind of just a league-wide ban, mostly in that case. And even the Nox has kind of been popping itself up in here. Do you feel that you're kind of getting targeted a little bit more than some of the other players on your team?
I mean, a lot of teams have been banning the Nox. I really love playing that god, but I don't think I've been getting too many bans. Just like Nox is all that I can remember, really.
Now, kind of going over into this dual lane, it's you and BaRRa versus PBM and PolarBear, or not PBM and PolarBear, PBM and PandaCat over there, trying to get all my acronyms together in that one. What's it kind of like facing off against a dual lane like that? PandaCat likes to play this really aggressive style, PBM with this invade meta. What's it kind of like playing against this hyper-aggressive dual lane?
Yeah, they're definitely like a really good dual lane. I always like playing against them because like it's always like usually a pretty close matchup, and yeah, you definitely like learn something after, and yeah, it's just should be like good games.
Well, it should be a fun set out of here. Jake, I'll let you get back to your team. That way you guys get set up. Thanks for coming by for the interview. We'll throw it back over to the desk.
Always usually a close matchup is the thing I latch onto there. It's always a fun one. I mean, this one, Dragons versus Bolts, goes beyond just the names Dragons and Bolts. It goes for years prior to that. It feels like the core of each kind of going up against each other for at least, I mean, this might be the 4th year in a row that it's happened. This year, though, Mifflin, you look over towards the Bolts. They actually have the most recent win up against the Dragons. That was a interesting week number 3. Week number 3 into phase 3 is what we'll call that one. And instead, we can look over towards the Dragons, who have the overwhelming majority of those wins. It is a 6-3 head-to-head. Again, that 3 I put a little asterisk on just because it's 6-2 with that last week. The Bolts in an interesting spot to try and maybe reclaim some of that glory. The Dragons trying to keep that level of dominance up over an opponent that they have been able to win over consistently.
Yeah, the Jade Dragons have really had a field day in this matchup throughout the entire history of this year so far. So I expect that they've got some strategies to do with the Olympus Bolts, but the Olympus Bolts have been looking just sweepingly different so far this week. The Danzaburou is a brand new addition to that roster. It feels like they're willing to go towards that super consistently. Maui now being in the meta as well. I think that could, I suppose, change things up a little bit for the Olympus Bolts. And the Jade Dragons are a team that'll tell you every single time we get an opportunity to talk to them, how did you plan for this team? What are you like doing to really target them in particular? And they say, why would I do that? My plan's better than any plan these guys are going to cook up. I'm going to play my game, and I'm going to play it better. And that's generally how they do address the match. The Jade Dragons, maybe more than any other team in the league, do them. They're going to play what they want to play. If the idea is we want to go to Gold Fury at 15 minutes, I feel like they make that decision the night beforehand, and they don't look at the game state when they make that decision on day of. It is just weird. It's 15 minutes, get to the Gold Fury, and sometimes 2,000 gold down, it just works out for them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not often they're 2,000 gold down at the 15-minute mark. The Jade Dragons are one of the most hyper-aggressive teams in the league that have got plenty of win conditions behind them. I'm excited to watch them play, and I think Mike's a great place to start. He's found himself another god similar to Jake in Maui that fits his god style, or god play style very, very well. Hyper aggressive, in your face, the most annoying dude on the map. He'll randomly show up at your green buff. He'll randomly show up at your blue buff as well. And he's going to make sure that no matter what you're doing, you're taking like 30 damage in auto attack from him.
Yeah, you're going to be worried about this dude. And seeing the Maui as well has been fantastic. Honestly, the way that you describe it, sounds like the team that beats the Dragons the most might be the Dragons themselves.
They'd say it too.
And it's definitely, honestly, been visible that way. We've seen them sometimes make some interesting choices that maybe have not led to the victories they would otherwise have found. Now, knocked down here by actually the team that just won, the Kings, just a few days ago. The second seed coming into this, now fighting for third, potentially going into Worlds. And you have to imagine, again, with the way this matchup goes, especially as you had mentioned, Nox probably not going to be highly contested in terms of Mike picking it up too. More than likely something that can catch a stray ban. But Maui suddenly jumps into the conversation. We didn't get to see him at all, I think, in the last set. Now all of a sudden having that available and prevalent for both of these supports creates an interesting dynamic around the Maui, the Yamoja, the Ymirs that we've been seeing. Like a lot of the top supports, especially considering they overlap quite a bit for these two, feels like they're pretty much out on the table and maybe going to just get banned away, and we'll have to start reaching even further beyond.
Maybe the biggest addition that Maui has to the current meta is the fact that for some reason now Yamoja gets through picks and bans a little bit more consistently, right? Now that there's another Guardian that is highly consistent, one that these pros have found a whole lot of success with, it makes it a little bit easier to leave the other Guardians available because you've got pretty strong fallbacks.
Well, picks and bans for game number 1 of the last set here in the Phase 3 playoffs. Jade Dragons first pick over the Olympus Bolts. And I am honestly, I'm just kind of scratching my head as to where they're going to go first, especially just because after last set, there's a dynamic shift. Bolts have been going to a lot of Danzaburou, PandaCat, maybe the only other hunter in the league that would pick that away from BaRRaCCuDDa. We'll see if they even bother. I mean, it's been a high priority for the Bolts. I mean, they were the first picking it when they got the opportunity to.
And I will not once defend a Danzaburou first pick for either of these teams. PandaCat, one of the first players to bring it into the duo lane, one of the first players to bring Danzaburou back. Generally likes to play it when his jungler is on something with some global presence. BaRRaCCuDDa just likes to play it. I can't find the common thread of Danzaburou looks good into X or looks good with X, especially when you're first picking it. I think they just generally like what that god brings. Maybe it's that CC-focused style of composition with that sake bottle. Otherwise, I think there are plenty of hunters that are a bit safer in a first pick selection. Ishtar feels pretty
Most
good.
of the tab, as it turns
CERN
out.
seems pretty good as well. Both available right now. CERN actually banned out by the Jade Dragons. But I think you do bring up a very strong point, which is Danzaburou is largely an uncontested pick for BaRRaCCuDDa. PandaCat will contest you.
Well, and I believe it was, and I'd have to go double check, but I'm pretty sure it was Mike who was pseudo praising is like a backhanded compliment of like, man, it's really impressive that Bear is first picking Danza despite all of the negatives that Danza brings to the composition, right? Like, hey, I'm impressed with this bad decision you're making.
And you're winning.
And you're winning. We'll see if that continues. It is a hunter that gets first picked here in the Ishtar for the Jade Dragons. So Danzaburou is still on the table. Carnanos, you had mentioned banned. Hell, Ymir banned out by the Dragons. The other side, it's the Naja, the Morrigan, the Daji. So Ishtar jumps to the top of the list. Cupid has also been a very prominent hunter over the last few weeks. And you have to imagine, though, the Bolts have been going for any other pick in that role. But they're the ones that are going to throw me for a loop. Nox is still available as well. So this could be a very, very Bolts top 2, depending on what they decide to go for.
I don't think the Bolts need to pick their ADC here. The Jade Dragons are a team that very seldom go towards double hunter compositions. For the most part, Pegon strikes me as a more standard mage player.
Yeah.
Generally likes playing things like the Vulcan.
And
the
even when he doesn't,
Ewok.
he's playing an assassin.
And when he isn't, he's playing things like Set or Gilgamesh or sometimes Susano, namely up against Ven. That was one of the historied matches for Pegon coming into the league this year. But considering the Jade Dragons' history of not generally moving towards double hunter, I think the Olympus Bolts can look elsewhere. We talked about it earlier. Nox not exactly a contested pick. If you want it for yourself, I think you can also hold out on that until third. But instead, want to make sure they grab it now. Lancelot, though, I think an interesting selection for the Olympus Bolts. Doesn't have too much history with this team, but does certainly bring some flex potential. I trust the Bolts to be able to play it. LASBRA in particular, this strikes me as a god that he's going to be very comfortable on. Last time we'd seen it from him, last 3 games really, has gone undying. I believe pieces together about 11-0 slash line, so very impressive from him. But that doesn't take away from Lancelot's strengths elsewhere on the map as well. I think it is likely slated for the jungle, but the Bolts can keep us guessing with this pick this early in their draft.
Yeah, something that you can technically flex, even though we haven't been seeing it. And you know, speak of the devil, sometimes he will appear. Set gets locked in for the Dragons alongside a Cthulhu. And they haven't locked anything else in with it, so it could be a pick for Scream. And I'd have to look up specifically to find out how many games of that Scream has played on. But it is a very common... Yeah, so Scream has 3 games on Set, which I think Pegon beats out in a single phase most of the time.
Like yesterday.
And so that one feels like a mid lane pickup. I guess we'll get to see whether or not they shake things up. Hades is the answer from the Bolts. And for Jake on the Nox, Baskin presumably on the Hades, it feels like 2 very standard comfort picks that we got to see a lot throughout Phase 3.
Could open up the door for Ven to look outside the mage column as well. Maybe Ven wants to play a hunter, or maybe he wants to look towards the assassin tab for himself. You've already got enough magic damage between Nox and Hades that I think that is pretty acceptable. Nox brings decent pressure out of support. Hades holds its own in the soul lane, so you can draft pressure in mid as well and see if potentially you can start to move the fight over towards the soul lane up against the Jade Dragons. We talk so often about these soul laners getting involved in the mid 3v3, the mid 4v4, I like to call it, when there's these high rotation style picks. But assassins in mid or hunters in mid are very capable of rotating as well, and one of the strongest answers to Cthulhu in the current meta is to, well, double hunter for one, but is to rotate over towards his lane and make sure that he isn't allowed to grab those blue buffs. We saw it very consistently in that last set.
Something that they could maybe, like you said, grapple onto. Charybdis banned out. banned alongside of Vulcan. So one that, and Charybdis admittedly, and me, shout outs to BaRRaCCuDDa specifically, because we used to see this a fair amount in mid, but BaRRa's played it quite a few times recently as well. The Vulcan, definitely a shot over towards Vin. With Hell gone, the Morrigan gone, the Vulcan gone. Now you're going to be reaching a little further for something that is going to feel safe against a set. Maybe going to have to reach a little further for it. Pele gets locked in, something that, while it might not have been a win yesterday, it was still looking really good while Kivo was playing.
Yeah, I love this for the Bolts.
Oh, wait, with the Lancelot, that kind of...
I think Pele looks really good here. I trust LASBRA to be able to play it if he wants to. I trust Baskin to be able to play it if he wants to as well. But for some reason, I think that Pele's headed mid.
You think the Pele's headed mid?
I think the Pele's headed mid.
Would you put Pele there, like even over the Hades, which is kind of what I thought
Yeah,
immediately.
you want Hades solo
Hades
for
solo?
sure.
Okay.
He
So
just gets so much
Assassin-
more pressure there. Hades is dangerous to play in mid because you have to get up into melee range on wave, which is never an ideal situation.
Especially with a set
If
there.
if you leap away, skewer for the slow. We've seen Ven play the Pele in the past, particularly up against set. Seems to be a matchup that he tends to enjoy. I think Lancelot is at his best in the jungle as well. So just by process of elimination, until we see this last pick, yeah, I'm really leaning towards that Pele mid.
BaRRaCCuDDa really messes with us. Locks into Pele? No, yeah, I think you're on the money here. Khepri locked in by the Dragons, really helpful for getting that reset.
See a gun this big?
And a Tsukuyomi locked in as well
He can't
for
help
the
himself.
Dragons. And it's the new Jing Wei for BaRRaCCuDDa here. He locks in the Danzaburou, stealing it away from PandaCat and making it his mainstay this weekend.
It's a pick that has a lot of consistency. I did have the opportunity to test it. It does have some interesting interactions with DR. I believe the sake bottle does go un-DR'd on CC, so things like Shadow Lock in a sake bottle could be very, very scary, or even the pull-in from Hades through Pillars of Agony as well. So I think it's one that could fit the Bolts playstyle, which is generally pick-based. The Bolts look like they're at their best when they can group up on an objective and force people to walk into them. And then it's very easy with this style of composition to grab them as they move in without incurring too much risk. That's why we see Jake Goat's sort of thing like the Ymir or things like the or Nox or things like the Maui. It's, I'm going to throw a wall behind you, I'll grab you from range, I'll pull you from range. Those styles of play is really what Jake goes for, and I think this is a composition that facilitates that very well. Whereas the Jade Dragons, just top to bottom, barring the Cthulhu, ignore the Cthulhu, we're not talking about him right now.
Okay.
Everything else, aggression, 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 dive, 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 and then a little bit of safety from the Khepri.
Yep.
Yeah, Tsukuyomi just piercing moonlighted into your tier 2 tower. Here you go, Scarab's Blessing. Get out, get your kill, let's rock with it. Set does the exact same thing. Ishtar can get similarly aggressive as well. And then if the game does tend to go late, you've got that bailout card that is phenomenal team fight from your Cthulhu.
And I think that's the glory of it, right? It's a comp that can scale the later if it needs to. But I see the Tsukuyomi and I see the set, and I have seen what these two players will do with those two gods. And I think that the Pele, as you had highlighted, it needs to match that aggression. The Lancelot needs to match that aggression because I expect to see some pressure coming out from Screammmmm. It was kind of rare, I think, a couple of moments yesterday where it was more of a trudge for the Dragons to get the ball rolling. Whereas now this feels like just because of how wonky it is, it feels like a Dragons draft, right? It feels like something where you're almost second-guessing where things go, but because we've seen them do it enough times so far this year, it locks them in. How do you feel about the overall squishy nature, though, of the Bolts, right? That's kind of the thing they're combating. You mentioned the Cthulhu and the Khepri. Safety, tankiness, that exists for them in team fights. You got 2 mages, an assassin, another assassin, and a hunter. Like, it's not a very hefty crew for the Bolts.
I think that by nature of how these drafts interact with each other, this is a game that could very easily be decided in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
If the Olympus Bolts fall behind, squishy compositions like this generally have a very difficult time fighting their way back in. Things like Lancelot from behind are very, very difficult to initiate or stick around in a team fight. A Nox from behind does nothing. Hades goes in on his own. If you're playing from a massive deficit, also very difficult. And Danzaburou, we talk about feast or famine for Erlong Shen. Back when Danza was getting consistently picked by the entirety of the league, it was, hey, he hit me with his rocket and he one-shot me and now he's ahead, or hey, he hit me with his rocket and he can't kill me, so I just turned on him because he doesn't have a standard stim or any great way to box back into those situations. But the double edge of that sword is if the Olympus Bolts pull a lead with a composition like this, they could dominate the entirety of the match as well. So
True.
I think we are looking at a highly volatile first 10 to 15 minutes, or as what tends to be the case in high stakes competitive Smite, maybe game one of a best of fives a little bit slower. We see not too much combat throughout the early. Then it can go a little bit later on, and we'll get a better chance to see how these compositions interact with each other in a true 5-on-5.
And actually hearing you describe the Bolts lineup, this draft, and kind of looking at it more in depth, this isn't too dissimilar to something that the Dragons would have played like when Nox was mostly meta, right? I mean, Mike going in on the Nox, fineokay's been playing Hades for forever, whether it was actually in meta or not, he kept going back to it. And otherwise, you get a lot of gods that are very, very picked up heavily, what is that? Loved, I guess, by the...
Admired?
Admired, yeah, something like that. The Dragons like
Favored?
to play them. Favored!
Okay.
There we go, we got there.
Oh.
It is favored, heavily favored by the players on the Dragons. Yeah, this motion doesn't give you a lot to go on, does it? Wafting the smoke into the air, whatever it is. I don't know, from a fire.
Something.
Either way, it feels like a Dragons of old composition. And so in theory, that means the Dragons know how to pick apart drafts like this. In actuality, it means that, like you said, the Bolts can just kind of hit the gas pedal if they want and maybe get even a small lead. All of a sudden turns into a middle lead and then turns into a large lead, and then the game's done before you blink your eyes. I mean, this is the kind of draft that the Dragons in the past have won a game in 19 minutes with.
Yeah, it is, but the key points of the Dragons draft, I think, namely being that set, generally that's where you like to originate your aggression, get involved in mid, have that set leverage, the massive damage that Skewer brings, and then transfer it into a neutral objective like Gold Fury or a Pyromancer. Set operates very similarly to a mid-hunter in that regard, in that you've got consistent DPS up against neutrals. Up against a Pele on the other side, I think a bit of a counter matchup there. Pele generally gets the better end of that 1v1, which means that one of the primary strengths, one of the primary lanes you would generally play through in a composition like this from the Jade Dragons might be a bit mitigated in its efficacy, and instead the Jade Dragons could look to play elsewhere on map. Your duo lane certainly incredibly strong. Anywhere that's got an Ishtar should be able to generate a good deal of threat and pressure. You don't necessarily want to play through your Cthulhu in the early game. We saw the Leviathans fall into that trapping a bit in their set previously. Goes over to the solo. Things don't really go so well because Ymir just doesn't generally hit through your enemies consistently or very hard when it does either. So I would expect the Jade Dragons to either all in and try and play into that counter matchup up against the Pele and mid, or shift their attention more so towards the duo.
It's going to be fun to see. I think the duo lane in this case, I mean, there's a reason we highlighted it, right? It is very volatile in a lot of these instances. And I personally have a lot of eyes on Jake to see what exactly this Nox is going to be able to bring to the table. And more or less, if it warrants this ban that we've been seeing it receive so often, or if the Dragons have maybe made the right choice in letting that one through. For those of you who are wondering, you can tell that Vin doesn't maybe play as much of the Pele normally, maybe on his account, because he had a banned skin when they loaded in, so they were remaking real fast. Should be getting into game pretty soon here. And that means we're starting to get at the cusp of, especially on a best of 5, this conversation of team fights, this conversation of who can win game number 1, start things off right, and kind of where your inclination is for either of these. I mean, I think it does depend a lot on the early game. You had kind of highlighted that already. But do you think that it's so dependent on that like first 5-10 minutes? Or is there a way that this game gets dragged out the way the Dragons actually have for the last couple of days?
I mean, the game could obviously go long. If it's a largely non-combative early game, I can see this game going a bit longer. Both of these compositions have the capacity to play generally safe in the lane. Set can clear away from a distance, reset. Tsukuyomi can spend a lot of time in the jungle. If the Jade Dragons decide to take the path of least resistance, they've got that Khepri for just an added safety line as well. But I do not imagine that that's the case. The Jade Dragons strike me as a team that are very willing to fight, and the Bolts have drafted themselves a composition that is very capable of fighting early as well.
I'm actually really pumped to see. I think the last time, and I'd have to go find the game exactly, but I know we've seen a lot of the duo assassins coming from the Dragons, but specifically Set and the Tsukuyomi is the one that stands out to me, just because of the way that Scream plays that pick. and I wanted to go back to look at it. I was actually, it wasn't even Scream that was on the team. You had highlighted specifically Pegon going up against Venenu that one time, kind of infamously, where he just
5 solo kills,
continuously shut him down. Now that you've got the Tsukuyomi alongside you, you got Scream alongside you, do you think that the Dragons are playing through mid early on in this one? Do you think that there's merits to maybe putting pressure on the duo lane, like you had said, maybe making that a little more explosive?
I think it all comes down to play on field again. I know it's such a cop-out answer, but if set establishes a lead, keep jamming the lead there. Play through your set. But it is a counter matchup. Pele, I think, really does get the better end of that 1v1, which would make it difficult to want to dedicate your time to playing there. But in the 2v2 or the 2v1, Tsukuyomi can really finish up some of these kills.
Well, I guess we'll get to see if Scream will be the one finishing him up or if it's going to be the set. So we jump into game number 1 of Bolts versus Dragons with JMac and Trelly.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gore and Myth. Our first game of the final set of the Phase 3 playoffs. Obviously, both of these teams have already made their way to the SWC, but now playing for that 3rd seed spot. The opportunity to pick your opponent, at least at the very end, waiting for those teams in January to be decided, or are going to be left over with the table scraps of who doesn't get drafted amongst the rest of them there. It's J-Mac, Trelly, and Doug jumping in to game number 1. And maybe a bit of a different look here out of the Bolts, Trelly, is we're seeing the double assassin, something that's very common with the Dragons. We've seen it common with the Titans as well when Paul is playing this set, but we're not typically used to seeing Venenu on things like Pele mid.
Yeah, it seemed to me like the option was, you know, we can play their game, or we can play normally. And Ven said, I probably don't want to get bullied by Pegon on the set. I've seen how that goes, so maybe I try and match that presence with the Pele myself, and we'll see how that ends up working for him. Typically, the minis have been getting invaded as of recent, and PBM is going to do that once again, trying to slow down the clear and also steal away a bit of the XP for the BaRRaCCuDDa over in that duo lane. But I am excited to see, because usually when you see the double assassin, it means you're probably looking to brawl, right? You're probably looking to get active in the early, and that's exactly what the Olympus Bolts have been going for. Usually a ton of CC as well from BaRRa and Jake. They've been comboing extremely well with this Danzaburou, so I'm excited to see what they do with it.
I do like seeing that. Both the Hunters holding on to their world title tag, even though PBM technically could be wearing his, he's not, which is a little strange to me that he's not holding on to that champion title.
I mean, he's been there, done that, you know?
Yeah, okay, I guess so. I mean, for BaRRa, that was, oh man, this sounds mean to say for BaRRa, that was 8 years ago that he got his, but hey, he still got one.
No,
and there aren't very many players in the world who can say that they are a world champion.
I mean, that's what I'm saying, yeah. BaRRa, he can wear that loud and proud. Like he was one of the first, so
true.
He is allowed to wear it. I'm just saying, like, just because it's been a bit doesn't mean you got to roast the man like that. But either way, I think they've got themselves a nice little duo lane. And Jake actually getting to play the Nox for once, usually getting banned out from him. But we do see the blink in from LASBRA, where Scream said, sorry, Pegon, I'm going to ditch you for a bit. I'm going to clear the wave.
One more hit from Ven. Sets up for the first blood, and that's got to feel good for the mid lane of the Bolts, but he needs to be careful because Scream is still hunting in the 2v1. But Scream doesn't have that shuriken up. Instead, gets body blocked by LASBRA. And the minions are coming in strong to keep Scream to be able to hold on to this pressure. But first blood to the Bolts mid.
Yeah, unfortunately for Pegon, gets caught out there, and Ven has plenty of damage to try and chase that one down. Scream wants to fight. Once that 2 goes down, though, he's going to run out of damage, but it looks like the minions and Pegon returning is just a little bit too threatening. And the Jade Dragons are going to have to back up. I'm liking the brawls, though. They are not stopping the back and forth between both of these teams. Just because First Blood came through does not mean the Jade Dragons are going to retreat, as PBM looks to try and steal away the minis once again and possibly pressure that purple. And Ven also going to lose his red as Pegon steals that one away.
Pegon, even despite going down for that first blood, not going to give up on the gas pedal that is known as the Jade Dragons. And kind of talking to Awesome Jake a little bit during that pregame interview, I kind of asked him, what do you do against a team like the Jade Dragons? This very run it down early kind of gameplay. Do you try and drag them out to late game where they were seemingly a little bit weaker? Do you try and play to the same strengths and fight them early? And Jake seems thinks that the answer for his team in the Bolts is to try and play a little bit earlier on and do try to hit the ground running up against a team like the Dragons.
Well, it does seem like that's what they're going for. I mean, LASBRA has been consistently looking for these ganks in the mid lane at the very least, trying to scrap, but I want to look over towards the solo lane, you know. When you have Baskin on the Hades, usually that's where we see a lot of the pressure here for the Olympus Bolts, but that, you gotta look at the opposite side and see fineokay on that Cthulhu, and that's a bit intimidating. Not because of the damage that Cthulhu does now, more so because of how difficult it is to actually kill a Cthulhu. If you can't kill a Cthulhu, maybe you look over to this side of the map and Scream finds it.
BaRRaCCuDDa gonna be away from the damage. Unfortunately for Scream, he's a little too far from Bear. The double stun does hit, gets the beads from the Danza, but PBM locked in the tower. One more hit from it would have done so. But he's able to get out for that last tower shot through. But here comes LASBRA, dismounts off the horse. Dash 1, dash 2, and kill 2 for the Olympus Bolts.
Yeah, beautifully played, but it doesn't look like this fight's over. Scream taking a lot of damage, and Venenu is going to be able to pick up that one, his second kill of the game. You can't dive that tier 1 tower that quick, and I don't blame Scream for going for it. He had a lot of damage, but the fact that PBM started taking up that tower just for a Rising Dawn, I mean, Khepri does not apply that much extra damage. So I think that dive was a little unfortunate. Not enough, and 3-0 for the Olympus Bolts.
I like that Panda's still playing aggressive despite the fact that he just lost his dual lane partner, but BaRRaCCuDDa so far away now, no chance that PandaCat would be able to get the kill that time around. So 3 up now for the Olympus Bolts, about a 500-600 gold lead, so nothing too crazy. Most of that being first blood bounty, a proxy farm by Mike and Pegon as they walk back through the jungle as they see LASBRA on the other side of that tower. And it's a great, a confident start from the Olympus Bolts, and I think one that maybe they and the fans at home for the Bolts have been wanting to see. Coming into this tournament kind of felt like, man, what kind of Bolts are we going to see? Are we going to get this really kind of weird early game and maybe questionable mid? Are we going to see the Bolts that kind of struggled at the early portion of this phase? Or are we going to get this kind of reinvigorated Olympus Bolts team? Didn't look the best on day number 1, still kind of getting their footing, but it seems that the Bolts have really kind of found a home in this playoffs.
Yeah, I would say so. Loving the confidence from everyone on the team. That gold lead has been slowly catching up here for the Jade Dragons, just superior farm and invades all around. It's pretty much just the first blood bounty, I would say. Like, I mean, 3-0, the Bolts are up, but you know, the gold wilt and the XP is not reflecting it just yet. And this has been a lot of that damage, right? A lot of scrapping here. You can see Pegon went into the Kingslayer, but he does not want to chase that one down. He was trying to find an opportunity to fight Ven, but actually decided against it.
Ven actually on the lower end of XP compared to Pegon because no rotation was made through. Scream ults over to Baskin.
No way.
But Baskin will lock him inside the tower. Beans gets Scream out, but Baskin gets a dash just in time. And fineokay does not have the range on that AoE in the ultimate form. Baskin will be able to live through. Might wait for a couple of minions to get some healing in, but good live by Baskin. Make sure that Scream and fineokay don't come up big.
Man, there's no way they kill him there. I mean, Scream lost beads. He should have died. Like, if he didn't have beads there, he was getting sucked underneath that tower. Hades, level 8 Hades. So much damage. The mitigations for Pillars of Agony as well. I think Scream was counting on fineokay tanking up that tower, but also realized, hey, I don't want to be the one going under as well. So I guess the call was full damage Hades. We'll try our luck. Didn't work out in that case, and now Scream has to play a little bit safer on this Tsukuyomi, but Pegon does not have to play safer. He's invading. He's trying to grab that red buff. Just went for a skewer, couldn't find it, and is going to be able to back up. That does mean that Baskin has to play a little bit safer over on the right side of the map, but I don't imagine Scream even wants to spend any more time near that Hades when looking towards mid lane could be his call.
Very well.
PandaCat throwing a few taunts out there towards their lane opponents. Venenu chased by Scream. Quick ult gets him out of the stun from the Tsukuyomi. Venenu lives just barely throughout all the damage in the onslaught there. Back and even for levels between the two mids. Baskin goes aggressive on towards fineokay. Finds some nice damage back out there, but it is two Guardians unless we see something absolutely wild happen, like fineokay standing in a full wave with that Devour Soul combo. Probably won't see too many deaths without a jungler on that side of the map.
Hey man, Hades isn't a Guardian anymore, alright? He's a mage. He does big damage numbies.
You're not wrong, and that's the thing, is you're not wrong. BaRRaCCuDDa maybe makes the wrong decision rocketing in towards PandaCat. PBM will make sure that Panda gets to live through this fight. BaRRaCCuDDa still barely alive, but it doesn't matter. Even with the revive, it's not necessary. PandaCat and PBM turn this one around. It's BaRRaCCuDDa in the dirt. Awesome Jake walks back up. Might not be the best idea for the Bolts support as the Jade Dragons are now finally on the board.
Yeah, LASBRA looks like he was trying to catch a lazy backing PandaCat, but he's already made it back to base in that regard. Maybe just takes BaRRa's wave in the meantime, but that would kind of be rude after he just died, so I like the idea of leaving that one open. A close brawl for sure, but the shielding from PBM as well as the shell being popped made sure that BaRRaCCuDDa was not going to win that one. You get the beads down at the very least, so maybe it opens up an opportunity for a regank situation, but PandaCat staying alive there definitely hurts the fight and the laning phase here of BaRRa for the time being. Still kill lead and the gold lead in favor of the Olympus Bolts. With the Jade Dragons, they have proven they're not afraid to scrap. They're not afraid to look for these ganks. I mean, Pegon, I would say, has been playing more aggressive since he died. He just keeps stepping up towards that red buff and looking for poke. Don't think it'll slow down anytime soon.
Jake spots out, well, 2 and then finds a third one in PBM who dashes past him. Small group up by the Dragons to try and invade the Scorpion. Quick counter grouping by the Bolts to push them away from that smaller neutral objective. And now with that kill in the dual lane, PandaCat's gotten himself a pretty nice lead over BaRRaCCuDDa at bare minimum a full level, depending on if BaRRa does hit 9 with this wave clear. PandaCat can just keep this one going. Doesn't seem that there's any reason for someone to rotate over towards his side of the map any further unless they want to try and get another kill onto BaRRa or set up for this gold Fury. PandaCat sitting very comfortable in the lead right now.
Yeah, if Panda ever uses an ultimate aggressively, then maybe BaRRa and Awesome Jake can try and form a gank, and that's the plan currently. You can see Awesome Jake on the way, hasn't stepped over any wards. Panda got the feel that something was going on and decided to go right back to the tower and start taunting some more. So he's very much on to Awesome Jake and knows that there's going to be some attempts at his life coming with those beads down for another 35 seconds. So I don't think that's the way the Olympus Bolts are going to get back into this one in the duo. But a level lead isn't the worst thing in the world, especially when Panda doesn't have the crit online yet. Once he backs up, we'll be able to finish up that Shadow Steel Shuriken, and that's when you really want to stop the ganks. But it looks like getting the beads down from BaRRa. PBM is going to try to find something here. Has to go into the rocket.
Oh, the rocket blocked, but PBM misses the dash onto BaRRaCCuDDa, and that might be the only thing that spares the Danzaburou's life. LASBRA and the rest of the Bolts on the way for a counter gank. Scream sitting behind. LASBRA finds the knockback onto PBM. The silence into the root is good. PBM knocked up before he can get the revive. Maybe we see Scream make a fight back in with Panda, but in a 2v4 scenario, not the most hopeful for the Dragons. It's the Bolts who come up with one.
Yeah, you can see Pegon was almost on the way until he realized that Baskin was clearing his mid-wave, so there was going to be a bit of rotation happening, and I don't think they wanted to commit to that fight. The Jade Dragons, that is, decided on just backing up. But there are... the Pyromancer isn't available, right? It spawned in 10 minutes, and neither team has looked towards it because of the fact that neither solo laner has a clear lead, still sitting 12-12. I don't think the opportunity opens up any easier, but with Assassins in the mid lane and the fact that Ben is sitting 3-0 on this Pele, wouldn't be surprised if it was the Olympus Bolts that started to look towards this Pyromancer early on. Just feel like it's a free pull or something of that nature. But so far, hasn't been the call. Just trying to poke out the bug has been what's going on.
Whoa, fight on the right has gone south for the Jade Dragons as Baskin gets the pick onto Pegon, who had rotated over with fineokay towards blue. Baskin doesn't get hit by that fear. fineokay's got a dash out. But LASBRA Baskin should have the gap closed, even with this Mire. It's a dive in by Baskin. Good fear by fineokay, and the dash just a little too short.
The battle of the
from
fears.
LASBRA.
Oh,
but now,
it's not done yet.
Who needs a fear? We've got a silence death ball off the mark. Root connects, and Awesome Jake with the rest of the team take down fineokay. A very long, extended fight on the right comes up 2 for the Bolts.
Yeah, unfortunate. Pegon dies immediately in that engagement, and that was a lot of the damage. I was trying to figure out what else the Jade Dragons were going to get done with all that dive over on right. It was a beautiful fear in from Baskin that even put fineokay in the position to die, and then fineokay almost saved himself with a beautiful fear right back. Did get some passive stacks though, and those start to add up for the Cthulhu. But good wraparound by Jake. Didn't hit the ultimate, but was able to grab the Shadow Lock, which confirmed that kill. All the while, BaRRaCCuDDa was taking a bit of pressure over on the left side of the map, and Oracle Vision going to be in favor of the Jade Dragons. That gold lead is starting to climb, J-Mac. It's about 2K at this point, but for 6 kills, it could be a lot worse. You know, the objectives have not started to go down here for the Olympus Bolts just yet.
Yeah, it's been quiet as far as that department is concerned. No Pyromancers, no Gold Fury pulls, nothing of the sorts just yet for the Olympus Bolts. So all their lead has just come from the kills and then the farm they gotten after, well, plus tier 1 tower on the right side. fineokay losing out on a little bit of that safety for his side of the map. So now for the Jade Dragons, I mean, as you say, this gold starting to build up for the Bolts. Nothing too crazy right now. I mean, 2,500 gold between the entire team is maybe like a tier 1 item at best for a majority of these players out there. Where's kind of that avenue back, maybe for the Jade Dragons to kind of shore up this gold lead and kind of get themselves back in?
In my head, there's one avenue back, and the name is PandaCat. I mean, you got to play through your duo laner. He's got the only lead currently on the map besides Screammmmm in the jungle, and it's not you're looking for LASBRA. You might be looking for a fight on the PolarBearMike because he's caught out.
Could find a good pick on towards the Khepri, but the Olympus Bolts think twice about a huge commitment over on this bottom side. Even without fineokay there, though, Jade Dragons would have been having to fight 3 versus 4 should the Bolts have decided to commit to the fight. Instead, Bolts will try and commit towards a new fight, keeping the Greater Scorpion away from the Dragons, leaving Venenu by himself in the mid to clear.
As far as I'm concerned, I am hold that thought. fineokay, I was going to say, might be getting caught out by the lock, but will not. Greater Scorpion tried to be invaded there. And it looks like as long as the Jade Dragons are just sitting back and farming up a bit, Pegon really is going to come online. Screammmmm would love to get a little bit of extra damage online as well. That sort of thing does start to add up the extra itemization for these assassins. But now it looks like the Olympus Bolts have so much more pressure on the right side of the map. Baskin has slowly been climbing ahead of fineokay. That gank was enough to put him a solid, let's call it a level and a half for now, but 2 levels currently above the Cthulhu. And that starts to add up, right? This Hades can be a disaster once it starts rotating in and getting to these carries. Those Pillars of Agony really do start forcing those relics. So I want to see Baskin rotate over towards this left side of the map here soon. Gold Fury, I mean, it's only looking more and more doable for the Olympus Bolts.
Yeah, now that crit has come online for BaRRaCCuDDa, working on his second of those crit items in the tree. Venenu has a decent bit of power in towards his build as well. Ooh, could be
That's some good damage.
a very good chance to go over towards the Gold Fury, especially if you're able to get poke onto PandaCat like BaRRaCCuDDa has. Even despite the deficit that Barra had earlier on up against PandaCat, he's been able to shore that one up pretty cleanly with the rest of his squad. The Olympus Bolts, they'll drop a bracer by the Gold Fury. That's a nice little back and forth power and speed spike for the team. Gold Fury started by the Olympus Bolts. What's the answer back for the Jade Dragons? They keep kind of ping-ponging the Fury between who's going to hold on to it. They got to make the commitment to it now. Lock on towards Screammmmm. The Olympus Bolts get the Gold Fury. But can the Jade Dragons be the team to get out of the fight? Is Screammmmm and PBM a little out of position? It will be the Bolts to take a clean objective, but now fineokay is here. Could start a fight. Unless Venenu's got ultimate and just says, nope, I'm out.
Yeah, I don't think he had to use the ultimate there. It didn't seem like there was going to be any chase, but I guess the fear of piercing moonlight from Screammmmm was enough to make sure Ben used that volcanic lightning to disengage. Get the Gold Fury, get out. That was the call, but now Pyromancer being started, and unless a blink in from LASBRA, no one from the Bolts are going to be able to make it in time, and the Jade Dragons get themselves a consolation prize. fineokay teleporting in was smart. I think he was trying to get to that fight after the fact. A little bit too late, but was able to grab the Pyromancer for his team, so good rotation and a good use of that relic. With both objectives down, you got to assume the fighting will slow for a bit, just because there's nothing really to fight over, especially if you're the Jade Dragons. You've lost a bit of your lead over it by PandaCat, so are you trying to force anything on the left side of the map? Doubt it. Just looks like trying to grab the Obelisk, and the Olympus Bolts will be able to grab another Trebuchet for themselves. They got 2 loaded up in their own base.
I wonder when they'll finally send those ones through. Doesn't seem the answer will be now. Do you think they're trying to stack up all 3? Is that like the legendary triple trebuchet that
The triple trebuchet, you get Oni fire minions, and you just siege. Get yourself a tyrannical
God,
plate helm.
Oh, that's terrifying. Oh, now, as much as I would hate to see that, I would love to see that.
I would love to
just
see
be
that
so
as long as
cool.
I'm not against it, right?
Correct. Watching it from this POV is perfect for us because we can see all the carnage happen from the safety of not being in that game ourselves. Going against that sounds like it could just be an absolute nightmare. Maybe fortunately for the Jade Dragons, at the moment, they've only got to deal with 2 trebuchets, maybe a 3rd one down the line, and they're probably hoping no Oni Fire minions anytime soon.
Yeah, and then Emperor's Armor as well. That'd be the full build. And we know Awesome Jake. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes into
that
it
one's
next.
very doable.
I mean, Awesome Jake is a big buyer of that Emp Armor. He loves getting it for himself. PBM gonna get caught out, but you can tell that he's been getting a little bit more tanky as of recent. That Spirit Robe proc gonna help out whenever Awesome Jake finds that combo. I can see LASBRA kind of just hiding over in the left jungle. Is he waiting for PandaCat to step up to clear the wave? It seems like he is, but oh, maybe PandaCat might take the bait. I was surprised. I was going to say, I don't think he's waiting for much, but that was what you were waiting for. I was going to say, are you going to go in here? Looks like he is, and LASBRA has the cutoff.
Goes for the loop, finds the knockback. Sun Sword's out on PandaCat, rocket to chase in, but now the swords will collapse onto BaRRA, but a teleport in by fineokay is too little too late. LASBRA has found his pick. fineokay now boxing against BaRRaCCuDDa. Will be winning that one, especially when Pegon joins the fray. The double damage is just too much. Venenu has joined the battle though, but a revive is there to bring Pegon back to life. Awesome Jake and Baskin have now shown up. There's no shot that Pegon still makes it out of this one though. Venenu low and Venenu gone. The Jade Dragons have turned this fight on its head, and it's LASBRA running for his life because Scream and fineokay are barreling down the left lane. The piercing moonlight will take him down. The Jade Dragons have fought this one back.
They have, but Baskin still does have that ultimate. Would he find a target? It doesn't look like Awesome Jake is looking for this scrap, so he's going to call for the retreat. I mean, I love the play, but my question to you, J-Mac, is why did they not just destroy the ward? I mean, fineokay teleported in the middle of that brawl. You just got to auto it twice. Like, I don't know why they really were there. It just didn't seem like BaRRa was really focused on it. I think LASBRA saw it as well, but maybe assumed it was Baskin coming. I don't know. There was no teleport for Baskin, so just a little bit of an oversight. If fineokay doesn't join that fight, it goes a lot better for the Olympus Bolts.
I'm not sure what was the mindset there. You know, maybe it was there was so much focus put on towards PandaCat, the kind of dialed in, seeing red. Okay, guys, he's almost low. We can just take him out before fineokay shows up or before this teleport goes through, but all their attention was set over towards Panda, so BaRRaCCuDDa unfortunately dies because of that rotation through, and it's a 3-for-1 trade at the end of the day.
Sometimes, oh, hold that thought. Once again, PandaCat is going to be the target, has to use the ultimate, but here's Ven, and he's not going anywhere. Another great gank over the left side of the map. Maybe that is going to answer my question. I was going to say, when you're feeling confident, sometimes you let the teleport come through. You're like, hey, you're here to save PandaCat. Guess what? He's dead on arrival. Now we're going to kill you too. But BaRRa didn't have much DPS for that. Pegon is going to get CC chain, but Scarab's Blessing close by. Should be just fine. Awesome Jake has ult, but I don't even know. I was going to say if that would kill with how little damage Jake has built.
Wow, that's a lot of damage onto Pegon. He lives. Fortunate for him that he does have PBM standing by just in case things did go a little bit south. He'll be able to clear up the camp, head back in, but Olympus Bolts, because of the pressure they put into duo, because of the TKO that they put onto Pegon, opens up for an Oni Fury. Not Oni Fire, but by the way, both trebuchets sent, so we don't get to see the legendary triple trebuchet from the Olympus Bolts. They sent one down mid, it's gone. They sent the one down duo. It helps take out a tier 1 tower, but will not make it towards the tier 2. The Olympus Bolts, with only a 3,000 gold that you'd imagine with the pressure they put up, with taking 2 of these Furies as objectives and all these kills they've been able to get, that their lead would be a little bit bigger, but have not been able to make a large one just yet. Maybe they can put a further dent in it. They can take down the Pyro. No! The Jade Dragons steal that one away just when it's looking a little extra hopeful for the Bolts to extend their lead. The Jade Dragons curve it back once more.
Yeah, good steal attempt there, and they were able to get it. That's going to help out with trying to climb back into the game gold-wise, but I don't think the Jade Dragons have ever been out fight-wise. They haven't been straying away, right? Whenever there is a brawl, they're showing up. I think Pegon has done a great job of ignoring the team fights for a bit and just power farming, right? I'm sure his minion damage is through the roof. First to hit level 20, actually Baskin was right there as well, but still on his team, Pegon, first to hit level 20, despite dying twice this game, has been really farming the map quickly using these set clones in the Sandstorm, just trying to get itemization online, and I think that's the best thing to do as an assassin, right? You need items. Items that really helps you go for those 100-0 style plays. With a Khepri in the back and the way PBM's been playing, Pegon should be able to W key once these brawls around the jungle actually do begin. A couple times he's tried and died a little bit early, but again, Scarab's Blessing really opens up that freedom.
Man, can I just say how much I love this new aggressive BaRRaCCuDDa? It
Oh,
feels
yeah.
like it has been way too long since we've seen BaRRaCCuDDa playing its aggressive, and not just playing aggressive for the sake of it, but also playing confidently.
Let's call it the new
his
old
role.
BaRRa,
The
because
new
he
old
used to,
BaRRa.
he did used to play like that. He got away from it for a bit.
He did. fineokay wants to get away from the Olympus Bolts, but holds on to his rugs, holds on to a lot of his life in that regard. But this kind of newfound confidence of the Olympus Bolts, it's kind of a breath of fresh air for this team, maybe for the fans of the team, and even just in the games that we watch of the Olympus Bolts. And seeing their growth with Baskin over the course of this phase has been phenomenal. I mean, you go back and Baskin was kind of just existing in solo lane for a little bit, then he was kind of being able to fight back, and now all of a sudden Baskin is confidently taking 1v1s up against players like fineokay, like some of the other tops in the league. He's winning even some 2v1 matchups like we saw earlier when fineokay and Scream were diving into him. This kind of re-energized Bolt squad is so much fun to watch, Charlie.
Yeah, I would say since Baskin joined, he had looked consistent, but the one question was, like, how much of the meta gods was he playing? He started off playing, like, the Odin and things like that, and it didn't look too clean, but he was always confident in lane, and I think the rest of the team has bolstered up with that confidence, so it's great to see. They're playing with the lead, and they're playing aggressive, grouped up around the FG, currently about 8 strong. The rest of the Bolts are on the way, so it's going to be 10 strong here shortly. If you're looking at burst potential, it's still got to be Baskin. The Poly Shot and the Devour Souls is going to be your best attempt, but the Jade Dragons have shown that they've got plenty of steal potential as well. You always got to be looking for Pegon. Those skewers can go from quite the distance, and they also have a good attempt at confirming that Fire Giant. So 50-50 is not the play the Bolts are after, and in this case, you're looking to brawl. PolarBearMike and fineokay have been consistent frontliners, and they don't have beads, so trying to pull those with a great combo from Awesome Jake could be the start of a brawl or a pull onto this objective.
You can kind of tell that the scrappier nature of the Bolts is affecting all lanes here, because it's BaRRaCCuDDa and PandaCat who are sitting at the top of the damage charts right now, even over.
They just be
solo.
ulting.
I mean, every single time we panned over to duo, it was a rocket flying in or a Sun Swords from PandaCat flying out.
Or
These guys
laughing.
Or laughing. A lot of laughing. There was a ton of that. Or just taunts in general
Yeah.
from PandaCat. But it seems like every time we were going over there, we were watching these two hunters duke it out between the two of themselves. Sometimes having a little bit of help either from LASBRA or even Venenu kind of making his way over as well. We'll see how this translates, though, because now that they saw that LASBRA was on the obelisk on the left side of the map, the Jade Dragons have the confidence to pull this Fire Giant. BaRRa, Ven, and Baskin standing by, so just pulling to see who steps in. Jake is here. LASBRA will be the last one on the scene. That's also Jake's eating a lot of poke for the Dragons.
Yeah, those caltrops and the auto attacks.
They do so much
They
damage.
do start to add up, and you can tell Awesome Jake was like, ow, 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 and just trying to walk away as quickly as possible, but the slow is coming through. It's difficult, though. It's not easy to pull this Fire Giant without your ADC. Now that PandaCat is here, the Jade Dragons going to be the first ones to start this up. Awesome Jake would love to sustain some extra HP before the pull, but it looks like PolarBearMike echoes that same statement. It's going to back up here. LASBRA is like, I'm going to get as much farm as I can without joining. You guys let me know when I absolutely have to be there. If not, I'm going to just steal as much farm as I can from the left side of the map. Going to take away Pegon's red buff at the very least, and that's going to be a worthwhile steal. And get the Protector of the Jungle, and that's also going to help out a ton. You thought this Lancelot was doing good damage or being tanky. Now he's got a little bit more of extra of both. Fighting him near the Fire Giant could be spooky.
Getting some of the best of both worlds for LASBRA in that regard. Pegon walks over, and
sad.
I wish that we could have had Pegon here, so I would have loved to have seen his face reaction when he walks over and sees red is gone. Just like, oh.
It would have been the exhale, just like, you know, like that's all you can do.
Come on, man, my red buff of all things. Like, that's what he's probably thinking to himself. You know, not the purple buff, maybe a Fire Giant buff for the Olympus Bolts. 3 of the Dragons have made their way here. PandaCat on the way. Pegon for this Fire Giant does go to the Olympus Bolts, but can they make it out of the fight? Baskin pulled back. Instead, will lock PBM in place. Can't even get the revive off. Scream to the back line with the piercing moonlight. Does a good bit of damage, but has to Aegis out immediately. LASBRA solos PandaCat all by himself. And what could Pegon do in the middle of the remaining bolts? He's got some good damage, but so does BaRRaCCuDDa, and LASBRA. Scream misses the stun, and he goes down. It's a double for Laz, but Pegon shuts down the Hunter of the Bolts before he trades out his life.
That's going to be the only kill that the Jade Dragons are able to find there. The Olympus Bolts, turns out all they had to do was commit. And fineokay, not out of the woods yet. He's got Blink and should be able to blink away from the horse, but LASBRA got a blink of his own, so they're going to trade in that regard. The horse could stop the back once again, though, so fineokay can't go away just yet. But the Olympus Bolts have FG on 4, and they've got the minions on the right side of the map. It's going to be a slow push as Baskin is also pushing down mid, but the first huge advantage of the game goes to the Olympus Bolts, and the first tier 2 tower as well is going to fall down. With BaRRa dead, there's no way they're looking towards Phoenix territory, even with 3 dragons off the map. I imagine just get as much gold as you can, back up, and then go for the reset. With Pyro and Primal Fury up as well, the Olympus Bolts picked a great time to win out that fight. And I think it all stems from PBM stepped up, tried to fight with the chase down, and a great ult from Baskin. I mean, it was the abduct from PBM trying to get aggressive, and turns out if you don't have beads and you get caught in that Pillar of Agony, you're going to take a ton of damage. Couldn't even get the Scarab's Blessing off, and then at that point, the Jade Dragons probably thought they had a little bit more time with their support once he was gone. And again, PandaCat getting soloed out in the back against LASBRA, that's when that fight really turned on its head.
It's an unfortunate team fight and start back by the Dragons. A great attempted initiation, but as you highlight, once the Khepri dives in, that's all that PBM can do at that point. Baskin able to turn and burn with the rest of the bolts and make it a 4-for-1 at the end of the day. Now losing BaRRaCCuDDa, probably the best member the Dragons could be hopeful for of at least being able to remove that fire giant from.
Now that guy's 1 and 3. They don't care about him.
I mean, it's the Hunter, man. That's their tower killer.
Yeah, but look at the 3 spectral armors. Everyone else, they look so clean. They've got all their fire giants on LASBRA, Ben, and Baskin. They don't have to worry about any crit. You got to imagine that's the A team. You know, BaRRa's just the tower killer guy. He's got to stay in the background. It's just auto attack.
You're just the pew pew at the tower line kind of person. Meanwhile, we're the ones actually getting in there with the Spectral. If this game does go maybe a little bit longer, maybe we see Jake go back and pick one up in zone, and then BaRRa be the lone one without a Spectral in that slot. He does Executioner. But the Olympus Bolts now all towers removed from the map. Jade Dragons with this double assassin might be a little difficult to defend up against. The Olympus Bolts push in. Baskin able to dive away. Those poly shots are starting to ring true. Starting to get some good damage out of this Soul Laner. What are the resources that the Dragons may have to try and propel the bolts on this Phoenix?
It seems to me like they're just going for a good setup from PBM and then poke after it, but the Olympus Bolts don't have to push in yet. They have the Trebuchet, so they're going to let it roll up, probably defend it for a bit, and let it get some free damage onto that Phoenix. I think as long as Mike and fineokay are hitting these clutch roots, and PandaCat is able to use those auto attacks to poke out the tanks of the Olympus Bolts, they should be able to fend off a bit. It's the all-in potential that the Jade Dragons should be afraid of.
PandaCat's got some decent range with that third course of the first ability to poke this Trebuchet from far away. So it won't get an insane amount of value on the Phoenix, but it will at least bring it down to about a 3rd HP. With LASBRA nowhere in sight and Fire Giant now off the waist of all of the Olympus Bolts, it seems that will be the end of their push. But Charlie, we're starting to move now towards Enhanced Fire Giant. And maybe fortunate for the Jade Dragons, they don't have to worry about defending fire minions.
Yeah, you're happy about that one. Despite the fact that the Olympus Bolts probably wanted to break the base, you're getting so much gold in pocket. You're getting full item upgrades at this point. You're upgrading relics, so I have to imagine the Olympus Bolts are happy with that one. They just want to look to this fight around the jungle and try and set up some ward vision. But the Jade Dragons, they've been around for a while. They know getting vision in the jungle before FG spawns in is key. So fineokay and Mike are going to step up and start getting as much vision down as they can before the bolts even show up to this Enhanced Fire Giant. I'm keeping my eyes on LASBRA once again. I mean, he goes for the wraparound plays on this Lancelot, trying to find isolated 1v1s versus the carries. He was able to pick off PandaCat last time. You have to imagine, if possible, he's going to try and make that play again. But the Olympus Bolts have to get aggressive towards EFG before the Jade Dragons want to step up.
Where Scorpion started. It's not really the ideal prize for either team at this point. Hans Fire Giant is on the map. About a minute till Pyromancer, if this dance does continue for that long. The shields from PBM and through his passive have effectively nullified anything that Venenu threw over towards fineokay, as he'll be nice and healthy on this Cthulhu. Again, no threat of minions popping into the base for the Jade Dragons. They can take as long as they need to try and defend against the Olympus Bolts, but the Bolts in that same regard with this 12,000 gold lead have a pretty nice advantage over the Jade Dragons in itemization. Dive in from Jake, locks in fineokay, taunted back in, feared and hit with some good damage. That's half HP on the Cthulhu. The teleport is back up for Fine. He'll be back to the fight in a moment.
Yeah, looks like he's gonna back up, but while he's backing up, EFG will be pulled. It looks like trying to teleport in behind LASBRA, and he figures that out immediately. Now this Lancelot could be in some trouble.
Quick dive out by Laz. Means that he's gonna have to go back and regenerate. So now the Jade Dragons have a slight advantage around the Fire Giant pit. PBM will start it. Scream and PandaCat will be the ones that deal the damage. How will the Bolts respond? Who will they send in for this one? Fire Giant to half HP. Awesome Jake finds the root onto PBM inside the lava pool. Doesn't find the knockup afterwards. LASBRA, though, looping around the back, has once again started poking Panda. And the fire will finally be leashed.
Yeah, probably the smart call, but now the dash away. Awesome Jake trying to get aggressive, and that EFG did not reset. It is still extremely low.
Going over to the Bolts so far. Can the Fire Giant go down to the Dragons? No, it will not. The Olympus Bolts get it, but can they find the escape out? BaRRaCCuDDa hit by the knockup onto fineokay. Baskin will channel the ult onto Pegon, but there's too much damage from the Assassins of the Dragons. Baskin is gone. Awesome Jake rooted out, knocked up, and now being chased down by the rest of them. The 5 collapse in, and it's a double kill for Pegon.
Take a look at BaRRaCCuDDa, though. He's not going back to defend his base. He's going for that left side Phoenix. Is he going to try and base race the Jade Dragons? They do have a tower to go through as well, and it's just Ben. I'm not sure if this is even the best play you have, because Danza doesn't do much damage to that Titan, but looks like that's what he's going for.
Commit to it. BaRRaCCuDDa's got a minion wave. He should be able to get this Phoenix, but the Jade Dragons have already knocked down a bird of their own. Barra doesn't even get the Phoenix on left. He's gonna have to get back. He got stopped. It's 2 versus 5. A dive
Huge
in
damage
by LASBRA is massive up against Pegon. And with Venenu here, BaRRaCCuDDa on the rocket to chase down PandaCat. LASBRA has found one. Barra takes a double of his own. The Olympus Bolts push the Jade Dragons off their Titan.
That was an insane play by LASBRA. He went for the Scorching Blink, ulted through, and now the Olympus Bolts are going to try and chase down the tanks of the Jade Dragons. Remember, they got the ult and Volcanic Lightning coming through onto PBM.
And he's gone. He should be gone. They'll let LASBRA and Barra deal with fineokay instead. PBM down 38 seconds before the next player is even up for the Jade Dragons. fineokay doesn't have the chance to back. He's got to waddle as fast as he can, but he's got LASBRA trotting in right behind him. Dash 1, knockback good, dash 2. That's the deicide. The Olympus Bolts can take game number 1 over the Jade Dragons.
They've got that enhanced Fire Giant, and they will be able to march in. Turns out Barra made the correct play. Said, hey, we got EFG. I'm going to get that Phoenix. Don't worry, LASBRA will defend without me. Then also goes massive there in the Olympus Bolts. 17-7 are going to take that one. It was a bit back and forth, that Fire Giant call, and the chase after was a bit questionable, but they were able to take that fight.
I mean, both Fire Giants going over to the Bolts this time around. A little bit questionable on both ends, but the team fight of that first Fire Giant went very handily to the Bolts. It was a 4-for-1 trade. They lose BaRRaCCuDDa, but even still, the Jade Dragons were willing to push back, even despite being down so much. The Dragons had a great fight at the end at that EFG right there, but great heads-up play by BaRRaCCuDDa and kind of regrouping there by the Bolts do bring themselves game number 1. It's a best of 5, but game number 1 going to the Bolts is a great start. We'll see if they keep up the momentum in game 2 right after this.
Bolts strike first here, and they look good doing it. We were talking a lot about whether or not this draft, honestly, we were talking about it being early game. That one gets stretched out, and you mentioned that it was entirely possible that it does, and so maybe not too surprising. But they look good, and you know what else looks good? A lot of the fantastic cosplays that we've seen out there in the community. And of course, that brings me to the 9th annual cosplay contest that is going to be going on this year. For those of you who aren't going to be able to make it to the World Championship in person, then just know that the online cosplay contest is going to be going on. It only has a couple of categories, but that deadline is going to close on December 19th, so you want to make sure you get in on that. You'll want to go to SMITE.game, click on the news tab. Cosplay contest is going to be listed under there. For everybody else, on Friday of the World Championship, there will be an open registration. Of course, the judging then on Saturday, and there will be the master level, the journeyman level categories with a ton of fantastic cosplays and a total prize pool of $9,000. Again, go to SMITEGame.com/SWC for more details. It'll take you to the blog, and you can find a lot of that. And of course, there's also the creativity, the craftsmanship, the likeness, thrifty, and the originality categories that you can also earn money for. So a lot of fun stuff that has there. I always have a ton of fun, Mifflin, when it comes down to the cosplay contest. You seem blown away that there's so many categories in there.
What? Go through them again?
All right, so you get first, second, third place for the master level, first, second, third place for the journeyman level, and then creativity, craftsmanship, likeness, thriftiness, and originality.
I'd
Plus
go for thrifty.
the
That sounds fun.
It is honestly, it is maybe one of my favorite, like outside of the competitive games, it's probably my favorite thing that goes on at Worlds. It's been a lot of fun cosplays. I think there was one year where I stood next to a Sobek that literally towered over me, like I was looking
I remember that guy.
into his mouth, and that was a really interesting red carpet to have to do. It was a very fun one. Of course, there's always a ton of cool cosplays. I hope to see you guys there, which we're also going to be seeing the Bolts of the Dragons. And the question that is still on our mind is which seed will be which for these two teams. But the Bolts strike first here in game number 1. And Mifflin, again, they kind of kicked this one off early. It was surprising. I think it was like a double kill over in the left side. And then slowly the game went on, but a lot of kills still going over towards the Bolts. Couple of fight backs from the Dragons. But they never really seemed to get their feet back under them.
Yeah, I loved the early game for the Olympus Bolts. I think they played through their strong points incredibly well. We had talked about it during a admittedly slightly longer death segment, but there would be a pretty decent counter matchup in the middle of the map. I thought Ven did really, really well there, was able to leverage his lead and rotate throughout the entirety of the map, spreading it well. After like the 10-minute mark, I looked up, I was like, man, the Bolts are up pretty massive, 3.5K gold lead. And I was like, GG, that's it, right? It was right here where I really
this
said
is the
GG.
moment.
I was like, Jake could miss half his kit and still slam this guy that easily. This is looking like a pretty easy Bolts dub. But the Jade Dragons had some pretty significant fight back. PandaCat in particular, I was very impressed with his play. The turnaround play around that left side mini jungle, I thought very impressive. But the Olympus Bolts, with this lead, with this style of composition, were really able to start to run away with it. And the Jade Dragons may have had an individual late game piece with this Cthulhu. I don't think enough to make up for the massive deficit that the Olympus Bolts were able to accrue for themselves.
And that's kind of the big deal. I mean, you had highlighted it, but that was one of the things that the Bolts did very well. Outside of this was another just insane moment. BaRRA with a beautiful back into a beautiful double kill. But there were a lot of times where, in Pigs and Bans, where you were just saying, you know what? This Bolts draft, like, it comes down to play on field, which is simple as if they get ahead, they can win the game, and they can win it pretty easily from that point. When you see Vin at 5-1-4, 6-1-7 for LASBRA, you can see a little bit of who got hands-on here. And I have to give credit. I mean, look, as fun as it is to meme him, and as silly as it has been in terms of Picks and Bans, BaRRa's playing this Danza better than he's played some of the things that are in meta right now. I mean, if he's going to keep going to it, he's got to keep proving himself on it, and he keeps doing it game after game. To the point where, like, I still think I'm sold on a first pick, but I'm not going to, I can't, like, down trade for him anymore. Like, I mean, he's playing this well. I almost don't want to see him on anything else.
Yeah, the Danzaburou has been a good look for BaRRaCCuDDa. I think it's the initiation and the positioning that Danzaburou affords you that really makes BaRRaCCuDDa elevate this pick. He's able to play very far in that back line. BaRRaCCuDDa is a student of the game that has been playing for an incredibly long time, upwards of a decade now.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, ADCs really, really wanted to be as far away from the team fight as possible. BaRRaCCuDDa, you can kind of see remnants of that in his play, where he doesn't barrel stuff nearly as much as these other guys. But there are situations where you need to get into that front line, you need to get into that point-blank range. Danzaburou's got that built into the kit, and when he finds those opportunities, BaRRaCCuDDa really runs with it well.
Well, managed to look good in game number 1, look good the last few days. Now we'll see if the Dragons can bounce back. They're going to be first pick one more time. And there's the question, again, always in a best of 5 and any set, a best of 3s even, but best of 5s it really starts to stand out even more. Is what kind of changes do you make from game 1 to game 2, game 2 to game 3, if needed, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, etc.? I was going to ask about the Nox because it's been banned a lot, but they seem to think it's somewhere else. And admittedly, the KDA kind of showcased it to be somewhere else. That Lancelot was the top pick for the Bolts in game number 1. And the Dragons seem to think, no. We don't want to see LASBRA back on that. They go to the second pick that the Bolts had as well. The Nox banned away from Jake. And so they're going to force the Bolts to play some sort of different style.
Yeah, I think the main note I would have if I were trying to feed the Jade Dragons information, not my place, but if I were their coach, I'd say maybe that set in mid, although very strong and has been a consistent win condition in the past, now that Ven has revealed that he is willing to go towards this counterpick selection with the Pele, we don't need to remove set from the God pool, but instead let's maybe draft it a little bit later on when you can address the Pele in the ban. So this next phase of picks, I don't think I necessarily want to see the set just yet, but if you can ban Pele and then create a situation where you get set afterward, I think that's probably ideal. The Olympus Bolts, maybe listening in, maybe hedging their bets that it will likely be a set, or worst case, you have a Pele, you can flex it back into the jungle regardless, will take it for themselves, and I think just a very intelligent play.
I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking was immediately is you see that pick, and, well, Vin just played it pretty well. LASBRA's got a really good Pele under his belt, though. And so I have some anticipation for the Bolts here, picking that in. Ishtar, not too surprised to see her. She's been hanging around at the top of the list since her release. Cthulhu, as well, hanging out up towards the top.
Why did you join me?
There's that Danzaburou getting locked in there. I'm not going to talk too much about him. I'm just happy to see him come back because BaRRa's just been having a good time. It's the Morrigan that surprises me, someone that has been banned pretty heavily over the last couple of days and is now going to be piloted, presumably by Pegon in mid.
Yeah, the Morrigan, consistent, decent ability to clear waves, has had some nerfs to her base stance. The Morrigan has had some nerfs.
Yeah, the Morrigan hit it.
Still incredibly strong, but maybe not exactly that hyper push that she once used to be. Still can match presence from a lot of these other mid laners. But I think the Morrigan could run into similar issues as a set in that if Ven wants to take Pele mid, I like Pele's odds in the 1v1 up against the Morrigan. I think that is certainly still an avenue that the Olympus Bolts could explore as we look at the rest of this draft phase. The Morrigan doesn't necessarily have the greatest answers to a Pele that can close gap. Try to go into the stealth immediately. Even just the enhanced movement speed ability from Pele, that dot will take you out of it. The knockups, the damage output, the all-in potential, certainly there. But what the Morrigan does bring to this composition is just phenomenal late-game team fight. It's a double Cthulhu draft. I don't need to evaluate much further than that. It's just solid.
For some reason, that didn't even register. Like, that was a huge deal to me the other day when it was the Morrigan, Cthulhu, and the Daji all on one roster. It's some reason didn't click here until just now. When, like you said, that's devastating. Some of these team fights. Umoja and Cliodhna are the two gods the Bolts finish out their bans with. Other side, Jade Dragons get rid of the set, so they're not going back to it at all, as well as the Thor. So thinking that there's potential for that assassin, that Pele, presumably to go back mid. And instead the Bolts have to go a little deeper, and for Baskin, they go to a pick that has been treating him pretty well, decently well, I think, overall. The Amaterasu, who's been on the rise lately. And with a matchup, maybe not necessarily directly into the Cthulhu, but if you're looking for someone who can disrupt the backline, Ama can dive pretty well.
Yeah, has an okay matchup in the Morrigan so long as she isn't a Cthulhu. Ishtar doesn't really have any ways to self-peel up against Amaterasu. Her chase potential incredibly high and dazzling offensive. Takes a very long time to channel, so pretty difficult for Ishtar to utilize her own inherent CC immunity in kit to deal with that ability. Just strong synergy as well for the Olympus Bolts to just run down objectives. You've already got, even assuming that it isn't Pele mid, which is I think an unfair assumption. I think it is like a 50-50 as of right now where that Pele is going, but even assuming it isn't, you've got strong confirmation on objective from your Ymir. You've got phenomenal DPS from the Pele and the Danzaburou, and Amaterasu's passive only makes that better. So I like the Olympus Bolts ability post-team fight to transfer in towards objectives. But the team fight as of now is going to need a little bit more in kill secure department. I would like to see maybe, I mean, another assassin would be just fine, and then you could just run the Pele mid or in the jungle or put whatever you want in mid. But I think a mage could go a long way here. Just some standard AoE DPS, some burst potential, some secure outside of the Ymir could really serve the Bolts well.
Well, I do kind of want to pick your brain on this. Atlas gets locked in. We've seen him a fair amount, kind of here or there. The Osiris in the jungle, you still feeling pretty good about that one? We've seen him kind of cropping up in a little bit of both the last few weeks. But is he still as prominent as he once was, or is he going to struggle either against this Pele or potentially whatever the Bolts lock in?
I think that Osiris is very good still. Yeah. It's not like...
He's got the thumbs up.
Yeah, it's not OG every single game. He's just going to out-pressure literally everyone on the map. Still has phenomenal ability to clear the jungle consistently.
Yeah.
Still one of the best mannequin users in the game, especially throughout the early. Has a couple of picks now up against the Olympus Bolts that will really struggle to evade the Osiris. Danzaburou in particular, once Osiris has closed gap on you, it's actually not very easy to use that ultimate to escape situations when someone's like already on top of you. Pretty easy to block out that ultimate. Even Ymir to a certain extent, that slow from the sickle makes it very difficult for Ymir to do his bread and butter escape, which is wall on your feet. All of a sudden, you've created the space you need. With that slow applied, you got to be a little bit choosier with how you decide to use that first ability. So I think Osiris here, very strong, should act as a bridge into that mid game, into that late game, or considering who's piloting it, that's Sprack, that's Screammmmm, could just absolutely decimate the map.
That's something we've seen in the past, right? I mean, you mentioned some days of yore where it's control for the Osiris. Potential still exists there for the Dragons, maybe because it's Screammmmm. We'll get to see that. Pele does get shifted over into the jungle, so LASBRA going to be playing that one. Unless it's some really, really weird Merlin jungle, but I sincerely doubt that one. Pele, something the LASBRA's played a good amount. Admittedly, this last phase is kind of hard to pull numbers for the Bolts because it wasn't a really successful phase for them. Pele, though, has always treated LASBRA well, and based on what we saw, not just earlier, but what we saw yesterday, I think as a god, kind of hanging out with the big boys right now. Merlin has been on the rise, specifically this event. Haven't seen him as much over the last few weeks, but his burn is really starting to provide for teams again.
Yeah, objective burn, I think, really, really strong with him. He still is the best mage on base defense situations.
Yeah.
If you start to fall behind on siege, or if you need to actually defend a bird, Merlin, one of the best at just throwing out damage from a range, controlling space, and continually just finding really, really good poke in those style of situations. My concern for Merlin into this draft from the Jade Dragons is the team fight proper. Merlin doesn't have very many resources to deal with one Cthulhu, let alone two.
Well, I guess we'll have to see how can the Bolts handle that, because that is going to be the problem they face in the late game. It's the Dragons, it's Bolts. They're trying to tie it up here in game number 2.
Yeah, the Bolts with a strong lead in this set, taking game number 1 away from the Jade Dragons. We'll see if they can repeat that performance, get themselves a win in game number 2. They got to go up against this Cthulhu again. They beat it once. Can they beat it? I'm going to say thrice, because it's not just one, but potentially 2 Cthulhus that can come here with this Morrigan. It's J-Mac, Trelly, and Doug back for game number 2 with these 2 squads. And you kind of echo that same sentiment, maybe, Trelly, that was brought up on the desk, where Merlin maybe not the best to deal with the Cthulhu on his own, especially let alone given that there are 2 of them that potentially will be running him down.
Yeah, that does not bode well. I mean, it's been always difficult to try and deal with 2 Cthulhus, right? If it ever is a combo you're up against, usually try and wait out the ultimate, wait out the transformation, or try and force the Morrigan into ulting early, where, you know, she's ulting defensively in that case. And those are always good strategies to try and deal with the double Cthulhu, 2 Cthulhu, Cthulhu. There's a couple names that we've used.
There's like 3 variations
Yeah,
of the name
you know.
at this point.
Point is, trying to force Pegon to play defensively. I think that's step number 1. Just trying to kill is extremely difficult. So I think the Bolts have done this many times, or they've played against compositions like this. It's probably smart that they just play their own game. I'm looking for LASBRA in particular to give some pressure towards Pegon, right? If that Pele starts finding those opportunities, then they could find, you know, some good early fights.
Taunt back on Panda. Mike and Jake are having their own scuffles while the Hunters duke it out. It kind of felt like a gentleman's agreement. It said, all right, supports don't touch the enemy ADC. ADCs don't touch the enemy support. Just you guys battle out between each other. And now maybe that's same with the junglers who are rotating over. Screammmmm, though, with mannequins. Should be able to chunk through this pretty quickly, but LASBRA's got a lot of burst damage on his own. Pick up by Mike. On towards Jake. This should be a dead Ymir, but a good freeze. Delays his life. A little while longer sprint is going to catch him up in time. Jake has some of the best juke boots you could ask for. But unfortunately, those boots have worn out. And the Jade Dragons grab first blood.
Yeah, unfortunately, that Mannequin Scepter was ticking away. Screammmmm just does so much damage in the early, and LASBRA can't match it, right? We saw that LASBRA was the first one to head over left. He's like, hey, I'm going to make that rotation. But it doesn't matter about that because Pegon is going to find that pressure we were talking about. But Venenu is going to get the credit for that kill. And that's what I expected. See, LASBRA tries to go over the left, Screammmmm matches it. Says, hey, I'm following him the whole way. I'm playing zone defense. I keep pinging him. This is where LASBRA is. This is where LASBRA is. Makes it over to left lane. And great pick up by PBM to make sure that awesome Jake goes down. And then LASBRA says, hey, I can't fight that guy, but you know who I can fight? Heads over to mid, puts the pressure onto Pegon, and looks for the kill over there.
This AoE damage on the left side is good, but the AoE is even better over here towards mid. The fire rings true. And LASBRA and Venenu take the second kill for now, the Olympus Bolts. And it really feels like we've come full circle in this mid lane matchup, Charlie. You dial back to phase number 1, the seeding match to go into the playoffs for phase 1. And it's Pegon just running it down to Venenu the whole time. Venenu really struggling in that mid role. Now we're having the opposite, where it's Venenu in a seeding match for SWC is teamed up with LASBRA, and they're the ones who are consistently running at Pegon. Happened in game number 1 for first blood, happened game number 2 for technically first blood only for the Bolts, but a second blood in the game.
And that's what I wanted to see. If you're going to give the Morrigan free reign to farm, just free reign to use that ultimate offensively, things like that, it gets rough. But trying to put down Pegon before the ultimate is even available, definitely a smart call, and that is exactly what LASBRA and Ben were able to do. Why Screammmmm got caught out, not too sure. He was stuck at level 2 at the time, so no way he's winning that trade. He was playing like an aggressive level 5 Osiris at level 2. You know, you don't have that escape, you don't have that ability to close gap, or in this case, jump over the wall and retreat. So I'm loving the aggression from the Olympus Bolts. Because of the kill over on left early on that the Jade Dragons were able to find, it looks like PandaCat's going to be able to starve this wave and make sure that BaRRaCCuDDa has to push up real far if he wants to get any little bit of farm. Keeping the wave here is disastrous for the Olympus Bolts duo lane because there's no way they want to step up to tower line just to get the wave. But it looks like, yeah, they're not even going to be able to. PandaCat's going to get some last hits. Eventually it'll push out, but they just have to sit back. They're just going to keep losing every little bit of XP.
Have a great day.
It's definitely not a position the Bolts want to be in, having to walk up beyond enemy, kind of that midway point of the lane in towards enemy territory to try and get any kind of farm. That's why we do see the rotation from Jake to make sure that he can help out BaRRaCCuDDa safely walk that direction to try and get some of that farm for himself. 2v2 now at the blue buff. fineokay half HP, won't be able to do too much help out Screammmmm.
Pegon.
The blue is secured. Pegon rotates over, but doesn't get anything going just yet. BaRRaCCuDDa in danger. Ultimate from Mike rains through, but not quite enough damage to take down this Danzaburou just yet. And it seems that this is the Dragon's answer to this aggressive duo lane, is to starve them out, force them to fight on their side of the map.
Yeah, but PBM and PandaCat both use ultimates there and don't even get the beads from BaRRaCCuDDa. He was able to stay far enough away that he didn't feel that threatened and holds on to that. So I think a big win there for the Olympus Bolts. Sure, you're going to keep losing farm, but both ults and holding on to your relic, definitely a good look. And now Screammmmm once again getting jumped on. This time Baskin was able to make that rotation over, and that's because fineokay was poked out before that fight even started. Had to return back to base, didn't have the teleport, so it took him a while to get in. And Baskin was able to join the fight so quickly with that golden blade. The Ama is just going to be able to clear the wave so much faster, rotate so much faster with the movement speed built into the kit and with the golden blade. I think clear time definitely going over to the solo laner of the Olympus Bolts.
the speed and accessibility that Baskin has to being able to access the map more than anything. Probably the biggest benefit that he has for his team right now. Slight level lead for Venenu in that mid, as he just now takes over to 8 to match Pegon's 7 that he's only been able to proc over towards. So that first blood that happened over in mid, plus the assist for the second kill, that one going over against Scream there, gave 1 to Laz, 1 to Venenu. Really seemed to have benefited the mid laner for the Olympus Bolts. He's going to need every bit that he can get. Remember, Merlin, not the best of an early game god. Once late game comes through, definitely helps out on his objectives, but as the desk highlighted there, can struggle into this Cthulhu matchup if he falls behind.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why I think getting that first kill on to Ben goes a long way. You know, Pegon has no problem farming the map quickly with that Doom Orb, and I think the fact that Ben has been able to free farm so far this game and also pick up an assist for himself is going to help out. LASBRA and Baskin once again looking towards the blue buff, but it looks like fineokay is a little bit healthier this time around, and he was not able to ult away. Close gap this time, but it looks like went the wrong way, and now LASBRA is going to be a bit, but will definitely go down here.
Yeah, I think maybe he was trying to get the knock up there before the stun connected, but didn't end up getting there, had to use the ultimate, and ends up going the wrong way as mentioned. So it's a pick for the Jade Dragons to tie up the kill scoreboard at 2-2. And even bring the gold slightly to their favor now. About 400 gold up for the Jade Dragons. Similar in XP, but PBM will now juice away as much of the obelisk as he can from the Olympus Bolts. Managed to take, I think, 2 of those ones out before Jake can really respond. PandaCat goes in with the ultimate, gets the beads from BaRRaCCuDDa this time around. And there's the safety gone from the Hunter.
The beat is nice, and also getting the ultimate from PBM is also going to be pretty nice. I mean, PandaCat trading ult for beads, that's something he's willing to take, and it looks like Mike's like, I don't think we're fighting anytime soon, so I might as well just try and steal that buff and continue to try and keep BaRRaCCuDDa's levels down. You can tell that's been the play from the start. I mean, just starving out these waves. PBM hasn't really left the left side of the map for too long of a time. Loving the aggression here from the Jade Dragons. They know what happened in game number 1, and they don't want to allow any more free farming on this Danzaburou. I mean, Bear's been able to be very aggressive with the rockets, things like that. Now that his beads are down, I wouldn't be surprised. And in fact, I do want to see Scream pay attention to the left side of the map a bit more. He could have some kill opportunities there if he can body block out that rocket.
Red buff will be cleared out by Scream and the rest of the Dragons, but a rotation in from Jake towards that side will at least force PBM to go back to base. fineokay battling with Baskin, who look, I guess was proxy farming back there. It's like, man, blue buff's not even up. Why in the world is Baskin here? Forgot that proxy farming still does sometimes happen when the solos are left on this island that they have been given. As Baskin can roam free through the jungle, take an extra Totemaku for his team, and trying to maybe get them back in a little bit, because Jade Dragons, with their 2 kills, have been able to get just a little bit more than the Olympus Bolts on the map.
Yeah, I can't wait until Baskin actually rotates into these fights, because that's pretty much where Ama shines. Same with Cthulhu, of course, but fineokay has been kind of stuck under tower. Baskin has that extra freedom, right? He's got that movement speed. He can clear his wave, proxy a buff, steal some back camps, and still make it over to the fight while fineokay is trying to kill the big minion, because Cthulhu just has so much trouble. We are going to see a trade of ults here. Barra's just going to ride away. That's not a fight he wanted to take, but it looks like Pegon, he's got no problem trying to chase this one down.
Pegon from the sake bottle will do absolutely nothing to stop Pegon on his transformation in towards the Pele. A 3rd kill for the Jade Dragons. A nice kill to bring Pegon back in, as he's been sitting behind Venenu this entire time in the lane ever since that first blood. A nice little boon for the boost for the mid laner of the Jade Dragons to get himself back in.
I'm trying to figure out where BaRRa could have piloted that rocket to actually get out, but I guess the fear of getting body blocked in lane was too much, so he had to go through the jungle and assume that he would be fine, but Pegon extremely quick on the Morrigan with Doom Orb, able to close gap and turning into LASBRA there. Pele has some incredible gap close and movement speed as well. So I think just not having beads was probably his death sentence regardless. So LASBRA might need to head over to left lane. I gotta be honest with you, BaRRa keeps falling more and more behind. PandaCat's been able to starve him out of a lot of this XP as well as take that purple buff consistently. I think BaRRa needs a little bit of help over on that side of the map, but I guess the call is more specifically, focus out the Morrigan. No ultimate available. They're going to dive this one.
Bean's gone now from Pegon. LASBRA dives in with the ult, but stuck in place. Makes it a 1-for-1 trade, but it could be 2 with this rotation in by Scream. Venenu without a flicker means that this is a good as dead Merlin add. And the Ymir to that one as well. Great dive by Scream and PBM to counter the dive through. That was a 3-for-1 trade that the Dragons will take every day of the week.
Yeah, that Olympus Bolts a little bit too greedy there, diving that tower for Pegon. His ultimate's down, sure, but he still had his stun and he still had the beads. Enough to delay that one long enough that Scream could make the rotation in and continue to make life miserable for the Olympus Bolts. About 1,700 gold lead in the favor of the Jade Dragons, and they're going to take away Ven's red buff in the process. The only lane they're winning currently is still solo, and it's not by much because fineokay was able to keep that blue buff back from Baskin and not let it get stolen away. So it's a very small lead in favor of Baskin, but fineokay's been doing as much as you can on a Cthulhu.
It's always kind of the matchup with Cthulhu against almost
Anyone that can clear.
Pretty much anybody that's got an ability that hits the wave at this point. Feels like it's a struggle for the Cthulhu for the first few levels. Typically the answer in the past surely has been, well, just keep invading his blue buff. Take the blue away from the Cthulhu. Make it harder for him to stay in lane longer. Make sure that he's losing out on that XP. And don't get me wrong, Baskin is attempting every possibility he can. Proxy farming into a blue. Just trying to take the blue buff in that instance there. Haven't really been able to find that success just yet. Scream's got ultimate back. Baskin has his as well. Shouldn't be a kill onto either of these two solo laners. Instead, maybe some damage onto PBM in the mid lane. Caught out inside the Blizzard. Dropped by Venenu, but should be fine still on this Atlas.
Yeah, good amount of poke. And that's really where Merlin is starting to come online, right? You can see Ven working towards even more damage. Soul Reaver would help out. And when you're channeling abilities like that, it does start to help, but it looks like Scream is gonna pull this Pyromancer. Not sure if the Olympus Bolts have caught onto it, but it looks like Baskin will be able to spot it first. Not gonna be able to get close though. Good zone duty by PolarBearMike. So the first neutral objective of the game going the way of the Jade Dragons. They get a little bit of extra gold in their pockets, and that's just thanks to some great pressure and great auto attack damage from this Osiris jungle.
Funny watching the supports just walk by each other, minding their own business. Mike says, all right, I'm going to go into the mid, just maybe get some farm, help out my teammate. Jake says, well, no, you do that. I'm going to walk into the jungle, see what I can find. They don't really get much of anything there. Baskin poked out. We'll have to go back to base, start working up on some of his other items. Does have Berserker shielding Golden Blade. Now working towards a Shogun's Kusari in that third slot. Give him and the rest of his team a little bit of extra attack speed to start working towards these objectives. Kind of double up and really help out with this Ama Shred.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying. The Olympus Bolts fight does look a lot better when Baskin's able to come through, just because they are losing a bit of XP pretty much throughout the map. Duo lane, both 2 levels down at the moment. Jungle, also a level down. I mean, Ven's been able to stay relatively close, but it's just Baskin. I mean, that's the shining ray of hope at the moment for the team fight of the Olympus Bolts. Not to say that 6-3 is a massive differential, but they have not been able to find any fight back as of recent. BaRRa does get a little bit of poke back over on the left side, but this Trebuchet is here. That tower is in danger of going down.
You see that Scream and Mike are just going to give PandaCat every avenue that he needs to get some more of a lead there. Stun onto Jake as soon as he gets out of the shards of ice. With some ice of their own via the way of Venenu. Keep themselves back. Jade Dragons will leave the dual lane alone, so BaRRaCCuDDa will be able to take down the Trebuchet, but Gold Fury has started. Baskin and fineokay are here, but unfortunately Jake is gone for the moment. Rocket in, slams into PandaCat. LASBRA gets one before he loses his life. Scream up, down in place, doesn't get anything. Blinks back into the fight, and now BaRRaCCuDDa being chopped away by the jungler. It's PBM to get the kill, but now a charge forward by the Jade Dragons. Baskin, not many options available to him. Good assist by Venenu to hold back, but Baskin will be caught in the mire and slammed down. It's a double for Mike.
I thought maybe that he was going to be able to get out of that one. Looks like fineokay's not going to let Ven back so easily. Gold Fury is still available because of how many carries have died in this engagement, but Ven should be just fine. Actually loses his beads there to fineokay. That's a huge win because that fight was over and done with, and fineokay still able to pull relics off of this Merlin. It was a great dive, though, from the Olympus Bolts. I mean, Baskin gets to the backline very easily. LASBRA joins up with them, but those Cthulhus became disastrous. I mean, there were some massive health bars that the Olympus Bolts could not ignore. And Screammmmm, despite falling really low, I mean, he was blinking in. He had the heal from the Cthulhu ult. He was just not stop chopping away. He had the Executioner, the Mannequin Scepter. Those autos were absolutely frying. So the Jade Dragons are not letting their foot off the gas just yet. Lots of relics down on the right side of your map, and a lot of relics down the left side as well. 2,600 gold, and even more dangerous, 5,500 XP in favor of the Jade Dragons.
Maybe part 2 of the fight around the Gold Fury. Mike is able to get a pull to delay things, but Baskin slowed down by Mike, stunned by Panda, forced into the dazzling offensive very early. But that's enough to be able to get him out of danger. Venenu and Jake on the way to try and stop this Gold Fury, but PBN playing the perfect goalkeeper for his squad. Venenu can't even get to the actual fight because it gets brought to him instead. Another pick for the Jade Dragons and a Gold Fury to boot.
Yeah, that's a tough one to walk up to. I mean, Ven had no relics there. Clearly, Mike knew exactly where he was, pinged him out before he was even able to walk up. And you could tell that LASBRA said, hey, I'm going to get farm. Like, you guys can go for the steal, that's all well and good, but I'm going to be farming the right side of the map. After Baskin got in and got out, he also went to farm the right side of the map, which I think was just the objective correct call in that instance. The Jade Dragons have been able to pressure pretty much everywhere as of recent. Gold Fury goes down, they're able to grab themselves even more farm, and a Trebuchet to boot. And he actually dashes in here with the rest of his team. I imagine BaRRa, wants to get out rather than ult in. I saw the dash in and I was like, is BaRRa fighting this? Does he feel that confident? No, definitely not. Had a little bit of vision and must have known. There's got to be a couple dragons waiting by my purple buff.
Yeah, definitely not going to live if he decides to go in with that one. Now again, kind of going back towards this mid-late game, Jade Dragons with 4,000 inclining gold lead over the Olympus Bolts. Starting to get a little bit dicey in the dual lane specifically. 4,000 down for Jake, or 4 levels down for Jake, 3 levels for BaRRaCCuDDa, and already struggling to take out the singular Cthulhu that is fineokay. Is it starting to get a little too dicey for the Bolts to be able to fight into the potential of 2 of these Cthulhus running down at these Fire Giant fights?
I mean, so far, fighting into 2 Cthulhus has not been good. They can get single picks, but they're not winning the team fight when that happens, so again, it's got to be LASBRA and Baskin getting to Pegon before a team fight breaks out, or after you see that transformation, disengage and come back in. I don't imagine seeing a double transformation from full health Cthulhus means the fight looks good. And actually, looks like a Fire Giant pull is going to begin because PandaCat's in mid. Not sure if they're going to commit to this fully. It was more of a bait to try and see if they can get Baskin to step up. LASBRA and BaRRa on the left side of your map. That would have been a good time to go for FG, and it looks like the Jade Dragons aren't quite done with that call just yet.
It might go right back to it. BaRRaCCuDDa's revealed himself under the tier 1 tower. He'll go ahead and take that one, maybe a little bit more if he decides to stick around, but fire has been started by the Jade Dragons. Baskin walled away by his own teammate. Fire at a quarter. Baskin needs to try and get into this fight, but he's being zoned away. Dash out means not a chance he makes it in. Fire Giant leashed by the Dragons. Instead, it's the fight towards Jake and the rest of the squad. Slowed down by the Osiris. The freeze off the mark. 1 Cthulhu is not enough. The Jade Dragons summon up a second one with Pegon, and they take out the support.
Yeah, LASBRA is in the back line, though. Not too much vision around here, so I don't think the Jade Dragons know about it, but his only play is to go for the steal. Pegon actually untransformed, so maybe that's his way in.
LASBRA waiting for his opportunity. Pick up by Mike. On to Baskin. LASBRA spotted out by Screammmmm. Fire Giant. The pit is the battleground for these teams, and it's the deathbed for Venenu. PandaCat picks up 1. LASBRA desperately fighting against Screammmmm. The 1v1 goes to Screammmmm.
BaRRa.
And the Fire Giant goes to the Dragons, but what can BaRRa do? The rocket misses. The sake bottle's good. BaRRaCCuDDa yanked back. Baskin has returned to the fray.
He gets 2.
BaRRa finds a double in the midst of all, but with Baskin going out, it's a delayed deicide for the Dragons, and Fire Giant around 3.
The fact that BaRRaCCuDDa got 1 was insane. I mean, he probably should have just been dead, but the fact that he gets 2 there, that's absurd. The Jade Dragons certainly happy with getting Fire Giant on both tanks and their ADC in the backline, but what a great stall there from the Olympus Bolts. It's not going to do too much as they are about to be much, much more gold in the hole as the siege continues. And I'm telling you, if PandaCat could have dropped, that would have been massive, but it was just BaRRA split pushing, was able to grab the tier 1 and tier 2 over and left, rocketed in to see what he could get accomplished. The Olympus Bolts looking a little bit worse for wear itemization-wise. You could tell once you look at their counterparts on the left side of the map, just how much they are down, gold-wise and item-wise. But really, I mean, it's PandaCat. Level 20 already, 20 minutes into this game, 21 minutes, and he's getting even more scary with these itemization changes. Gonna be getting that Silver Branch here shortly. And this Ishtar is gonna start to chunk. And I think fineokay has just been unkillable. I mean, throw Pegon in the mix as well. Two Cthulhus, of course. Once the transformation came through, Pegon was much more killable when he was just the Morrigan.
yeah.
But during those engagements, the rest of the Olympus Bolts just had to run away.
Yeah, maybe if the Bolts can bait out one of those 2 ultimates early, can make it a little bit easier for themselves, but as of now, they are 8,000 gold down to the Jade Dragons. PandaCat still maintaining the Fire Giant buff, waiting for the everlong wall to finally fade so you can walk in with the minions and drop the tier 2 tower. Jade Dragons still have a couple of more towers on the map.
Fino stopping backs.
fineokay able to delay BaRRaCCuDDa's back, but Venenu able to make it back with the rest of his squad. Still, 2 towers across. Dragons don't want to commit to the Phoenix on left, at least not yet. Maybe with the help of some Oni minions from this Oni Fury, they can start pushing up some of the remaining structures.
Gonna back up here. They've got plenty of gold to spend. I mean, they've been spending it as of, like, every time they go back. They got the towers down. There's still 2 more tier 2s to go through, so there's that Silver Branch from PandaCat. I was curious if it was gonna be upgrading that death toll, selling it for dominance, or maybe just waiting to see where the build was going to continue, but Silver Branch was the priority. That extra % penetration on this Ishtar definitely starts to help out when you're trying to siege these Phoenixes. But it looks like not yet are we looking at birds. The Jade Dragons want to get these last tier 2 towers and spread out throughout the map. Pyromancer also going to be coming back up here, so slow and steady. Only about 59 more seconds on this Fire Giant buff, so wouldn't be surprised if it's just, hey, can we get some extra relics? Is anyone going to step up? If no, then we're just going to grab the objectives and stay away from the Bolts. And it looks like the Bolts are echoing that. They're going to the left side of the map. They see the Dragons on the right. They're saying, hey, get as much farm as you can. We'll meet back up at the next Fire Giant.
So next fire is the call. Want to make sure to take these enhanced minions away. BaRRaCCuDDa does do so on the left side. Grabs an offering on the way out, but Jade Dragons with 30 seconds left on the buff. Thought maybe we would see a push towards right Phoenix, but they'll just go ahead and let that one go with their enhanced minions. Only the tier 2 and mid still remaining, and unlikely to see the Dragons group up for that one unless they start barreling towards it right now. Instead, they'll take a Pyromancer and reset themselves for fire.
Yeah, I like that call.
So with all the Phoenixes standing, Olympus Bolts, obviously they can make their kind of path back in. But is it really at least just as simple as, okay, bait 1 Cthulhu up and that's the dub for the Olympus Bolts, or they need to get both of those ults before they really have a good chance in these fights?
They could try and find a pick onto Screammmmm, maybe at that camp, or fineokay. They're looking for a fight here. It looks like Osiris is the target. The Jade Dragons are nowhere in sight.
And Screammmmm is gone. fineokay shredded away. This is the perfect fight that the Olympus Bolts need. 2 down off the back of a perfect engage by BaRRaCCuDDa on the rocket. Caught the dash initially from fineokay, and now sets up for the Bolts to be in a good position around fire. 20 seconds till it's respawned in. The Bolts can head over towards the right side.
I mean, if that wave of minions that LASBRA is currently clearing was cleared, that's probably a Phoenix attempt. I mean, they were all grouped up towards the left side bird, but even better, the Olympus Bolts are going to have some pressure towards the Fire Giant as it touches down. fineokay will have teleport back up, so you got about 25 seconds of 5v3 action before fineokay is able to join back. And Screammmmm, also pretty quick, should be able to make it. So you're in a position where you're fighting this second, or you're bursting down this Fire Giant, but you are not stalling this out. The Olympus Bolts got to go now. Pegon wrapping around back.
Time is now, but Jake gets picked up. quarter HP. Baskin charging in towards PandaCat. The stun is good. The Hunter is down. Pegon transforms, but is it too late for the Cthulhu? Double knockup slows things down, but Pegon is gone. Baskin low though. Screammmmm teleports back in with fineokay, and it's already 1 for the Jade Dragons. Baskin jukes away from the sickle, and fineokay roots 2 in place. The Olympus Bolts, they tried for fire. They're able to get 2 picks, but now they've got to reset.
Yeah, Screammmmm does not have the ultimate anymore, and it looks like the Aegis will keep BaRRa alive for now. Great peel, but Screammm's not dead yet. There it is.
The bottle is enough to give it in. BaRRaCCuDDa is going back in against fineokay. Finds the stun. The damage is good, and the Olympus Bolts out of their minds to keep this fight going. PolarBearMike praying and thanking the gods that that wall was to his backside and not in front of him. But the Bolts have got to reset before they can try for fire.
I mean, the Bolts are down so much, but what a great ambush they set up. And I mean, Screammmmm died for mid camps, man. He was over on the left side. He got caught out. fineokay tried to help him, also got caught out. And then the Olympus Bolts put the Jade Dragons in a position where you got to defend this Fire Giant. You can't give it up for free. And now when you're down 8,000 or so gold, still able to pull FG, and they're going to get it. The Olympus Bolts in a winning position for the first time. Not gold-wise, not map state-wise, but have that buff. And it looks like right side tier 2 is going to be the call. fineokay and Screammmmm respawning back in about 5 seconds. They're going to have to let this tower go. But I imagine have to feel confident with a little bit of a defense towards that mid tier 2, and because LASBRA's not here, this has to be a bait, right? They're not really going for this Phoenix.
Well, LASBRA nowhere to be seen. fineokay, ult number 1 for the Cthulhu goes in. The beam does clip Venenu. He's far back in this fight though. The Olympus Bolts are on a full retreat, but 2 knocked up, 2 rooted by Screammmmm. BaRRaCCuDDa with no relics left will barely hold on, but fineokay drops him out. Baskin, the next to go. The Olympus Bolts make a greedy play to try and push the right side Phoenix, and because of it, they've lost 3.
I'm rattling my brain here. I mean, the Olympus Bolts know they were almost 10k down. I guess not. They're going in for the pick on to Screammmmm. It's close. LASBRA will confirm that one, but now Ven getting chased down by PolarBearMike. And now you got 4 strong Jade Dragons grouped up in mid lane, and they want this tier 2 tower for themselves. Again, LASBRA was not there. I mean, what was the reason for going for that bird? Not sure. I guess the Olympus Bolts just thought they could make the call. And now it looks like tier 2 tower gonna drop down. The Jade Dragons can't go for that Phoenix though. We're gonna see the full-on reset. 1 more Fire Giant buff available, and it's on the Merlin. Venenu's got it for another 2 minutes and 20 seconds.
So it was a fire for right tower for the Dragons, and it was a fire for right tower for the Olympus Bolts, and with the team that didn't get the fire, now it's a mid tier 2 tower as well. This back and forth, super scrappy nature that the Bolts are throwing in this game, trying to find picks, trying to stagger these death timers and resets here, did end up netting them that Fire Giant, sure, but maybe questionable play around that right bird. With LASBRA not there, he's been the one who's been able to deal so much of the damage to Pegon, to PandaCat, even taking the 1v1 up against Screammmmm in that last little moment there. LASBRA's got the damage. It's just a head scratcher as to why he's not with the team on that siege.
I mean, I think LASBRA made the correct call. Say, hey, grab that tower, get out, I'm gonna farm up. And the Bolt said, all right, we'll do that. And then they saw, I guess, the Jade Dragons just put the carrot on the stick and hung in front of him and said, hey, look.
The dollar bill on the fishing
pole. Maybe you guys could get this Phoenix. And they're like, maybe we could get this Phoenix. And immediately, it was ripped away from them because that was a fight they just didn't want. When the Cthulhu ult is able to be done, you better run. That's my new one for you, J-Mac. And fineokay just had so much chase down there. And now it's time for the Jade Dragons to group up once again. And I imagine look towards EFG. I mean, 55 more seconds, it's just Ven. I mean, he's got Fire Giant. No one else does. So unless the Jade Dragons want to group up and fight without Fire, which I sincerely doubt, they're probably going to be grouping up towards EFG. They do have a Trebuchet pushing out left, though. And it looks like, once again, the Olympus Bolts are grouped up around the corner, trying to see what they can find. PolarBearMike might not be what they're looking for, though.
Doubt that PVM on this uber tanky Atlas.
He hasn't died yet.
Has not. 3-0 and 14 for the support. The only player who has not died in the lobby so far this game. And with the build that he has, doesn't seem like he's going to be dying anytime soon. He's picking up that Magi's Revenge for himself. Give his team a little bit of extra damage and movement speed whenever that bubble does get popped. The Olympus Bolts, they came back from a similar deficit. I mean, you go back to that left side push from the Jade Dragons towards Phoenix. They were 7,000, 8,000 gold up. Olympus Bolts find 2 picks on the left side of the map, and all of a sudden we're rewinding the clock. Almost the exact same position that the Bolts are in now. Only difference is no picks for them towards the left, as this Fire Giant has faded off of everybody who had it left. The lone Venenu will now be resetting for Enhanced Fire Giant on Crash.
I think LASBRA is going to try and farm up that Heartseeker before the fight begins. He's got to be close. You know, looks like, you know, it's at the tier 2 now, so that'd be a big power spike before this Enhanced Fire Giant brawl. He did go back to base. I imagine he's waiting, because it's like 3 gold off. He just keeps waiting for each individual tick. There it is. He was able to farm up that Heartseeker, so that's a huge power spike. You could tell that Baskin and Awesome Jake would love to be a bit tankier, but they really don't have the option here. They're going to have to stick around because Enhanced Fire Giant touches down in about 10 seconds, and the Jade Dragons are grouped as 5. The Olympus Bolts have not won a team fight when it has been this situation here, where Pegon and fineokay both have that Descent into Madness ready. It has not been easy. The Olympus Bolts have been forcing the fights before that situation can occur, but now they're going to have to fight head-on into it. And I'm expecting to see just this. LASBRA trying to find the wraparound, and already EFG's getting burned through.
PandaCat starting it up with Scream. Awesome Jake steps a little too far forward, throws the wall, freeze as well, but Sunder crashes through onto a couple of players. Ult from Mike, now on cooldown. Venenu's transformation, a couple of seconds back away as well. LASBRA looping around deep into enemy territory. Maybe that's the call from fineokay to let the team know, hey, I've got no vision on LASBRA. We got no wards knowing where this Pele is. And again, LASBRA separating from the team holistically. He's gone for a red buff on the opposite side, and they'll now rejoin the fight. Maybe on the backside of the fight this time.
Yeah, I love the call from LASBRA. I mean, Scream took a lot of damage there, but the real win was getting Awesome Jake's sprint down. When he's that far up, he has one option to get out. Once the Sprute is gone, he cannot just eject from a team fight. That much lockdown, Awesome Jake dies, and now you're fighting the fight without your setup. You lost Scream's beads in the process, though, and it looks like already EFG is going to be pulled about 70%. I'm still keeping my eyes on LASBRA, though. He's trying to find that wraparound.
He's de-warded the middle. Fire Giant at a third, but has been reset by the Jade Dragons. This one Fire Giant could end the game for either team unless a fight goes the opposite way afterwards. Awesome Jake pulled back, but now it's Pegon and fineokay. The double Cthulhu are here, but the health bars are at the halfway point on both of them. Not super healthy. Are these two Guardians now up in their massive form? And a lot of the ultimate waited out. Scream goes to the backline to find the 1v1 against LASBRA. He will get it. Pegon able to get the final shot there. Venenu jumped on, but Scream will trade out his life to get it. It's a double for Pegon, 1 for PandaCat, and Jake by himself running away from the duo of the Dragons. Baskin, the last alive, triple kill for Pegon. Maybe even a quadra kill for the mid lane rookie. No, PandaCat takes it away from him. 2 for him, 3 for the mid, a deicide for the Dragons, and a tight set with Game 2 win.
I really thought that the Olympus Bolts played that one perfectly. I mean, LASBRA got onto Pegon early, forced out the Descent into Madness, and then backed up. The one issue, though, is with that double ultimate, PandaCat was still threatening Enhanced Fire Giant, so the Bolts were forced to not wait it out and forced to fight in. And like I said, when you fight into that double Descent into Madness, you're gonna have a bad time. Pegon with the delayed triple kill there. Once he turned back into his regular form, turns out the Morrigan still does a ton of damage.
And the thing is, it's so hard to wait out an ability like that.
Oh,
That
yeah.
is 14 seconds you have to wait for that Cthulhu to de-transform. And unfortunately for the Bolts, that was 14 seconds where Scream was able to loop his way
Oh, yeah.
to the back line of that team fight. Started out great for the Olympus Bolts, but the Dragons able to go through. And PandaCat at the end saying, no, I'm the only one who's getting a quadra kill on this team this weekend through. Takes the quad away from Pegon, but 2 for him, triple kill for Pegon. The Jade Dragons have now grabbed game number 2 for themselves, which means at bare minimum, Charlie, we're getting to at least see game 4.
Yeah, that certainly could be the case, and I think I got to highlight Screammmmm as well. The fact that he was making Osiris work even that late into the game, it's sometimes difficult to find those trades where you can just unleash the lawnmower on people with those auto attacks, but he was consistently finding those picks.
Finding the chop win for the Jade Dragons. They tie up the set 1-1. We'll take it to a quick break and come back with game 3 right after.
it's a tie set here after game number 2. The Dragons making sure to answer back for what the Bolts did in game number 1. And in this time, it's pretty much a very similar story, just inversed, although the Bolts maybe got in a little more trouble for the Dragons, maybe brewing up a storm, which in this case is actually not a pun on the Bolts' like entire thematics. Instead, for me, it's a reference to the stormy skin that is going to be joining SMITE relatively soon here. With the purchase of any DKO Founders Edition, you will get this skin available free in SMITE. You can go to divineknockout.com to check out the launch editions and pick up a stormy skin for yourselves. And whether that is a skin that you want to rock in SMITE, or if you want the storm to be strictly related to the Bolts, you can call it as you see it. There's lightning bolts that are going to be flashing behind me any second now. And so that is the thing, Mifflin, I think that, hey, see, there they are, that comes to my mind, is that we get flashes, maybe, of lightning from the Bolts throughout that one. But then some really questionable decisions at times. I mean, some overly aggressive decisions at times. And those slowly allow the Dragons in a game where they were slightly ahead and then fall behind, then slightly ahead, then fall behind. The decision specifically around that Fire Giant, around that right side Phoenix Bush, gives the Dragons a lot more leeway to work with for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I mean, it is a worrying trend now with the Olympus Bolts around these Fire Giant sieges, just making slight mistakes here or there. In previous sets, it was, hey, we got Fire Giant, what do we do now? Let's split up 3-2 on the map and go get our 2 picked. This set, maybe shades of the same. Jade Dragons, though, I think deserve every bit of credit being able to close this one out. I think Trelly highlights it really well towards the end of that cast, saying it is just so impressive what Scream was capable of doing on this Osiris in the latest portions of a SMITE match. Generally, classic SMITE knowledge tends to lend itself to Osiris falling off in the late game, having a much more difficult time sticking around in these fights if he doesn't itemize almost entirely towards defense. And Scream flies in the face of that by simply just spracking all over the place. PandaCat as well, I think, really put a ton of pressure on BaRRaCCuDDa. Loved everything we had seen from him, controlling that laning phase, forcing BaRRaCCuDDa into inopportune positions, even opening the door for Pegon to make some of those rotations and close out those kills easily. The Jade Dragons, once allowed to play in the team fight, just look so clean. I think that's probably by nature of a double Cthulhu composition. Those are generally just real strong on the 5-on-5 engagement. And well, the Jade Dragons play well around it.
Pegon got to the back line several times, 8-4 and 11 for the mid laner. You had mentioned Scream, 6-6, 14. Shoutouts to Mike. I didn't even realize this. In my mind, for some reason, he had died at least once, but no, an undying game, 3-0 and 18. It feels like being able to escape some of the scenarios that unfortunately fell onto his team, and the Bolts are not able to say the exact same. A lot of good damage, a lot of good team fight presence. I mean, everything that you just said for the Dragons. All evident throughout that one. But the question comes down, I mean, obviously what we have seen, some shifts and dynamics. A lot of Morrigan and Cthulhu bans have not been outlandish, although more Morrigan than Cthulhu, right? Letting one through isn't as big a deal, though we've seen it kind of be shaky whether or not you want to deal with all three, because the Dodge Z's on that list. It makes first pick something that seems highly coveted. And I think for good reason, the Bolts are going to be taking first pick here as we jump into picks and bans for game number 3. Again, grand scheme, these teams fighting for 3rd seed, which might not seem like much, but 3rd seed gets a choice of opponent. 4th seed doesn't. And so it is something that's going to be very helpful towards Worlds, giving you that nice little punch. Bolts immediately ban out the Naja, trying to control that one as best they can. Cardinals is the answer back from the Dragons. The Morrigan does make it onto the ban list, someone that has been just maybe too strong, the Daji as well. And so it feels like even if Cthulhu makes it through, might not be the most prevalent pick that's left.
No, and an individual Cthulhu is much more controllable than the double. I think it's the combo of, hey, I got knocked up by Cthulhu, it's going to happen again, oh wait, I got knocked up by the other Cthulhu. And it's that juggle situation that makes that composition so powerful, as well as just being able to stagger those ultimates. Means that you're probably constantly going to have that Cthulhu on your team, so the Morrigan ban makes sense to me. Daji as a standard ban, just by nature of her being incredibly strong on her own, not nearly as reliant on having that secondary Daji to be effective in some of these team fights. Surprised to see the Bolts ban out the Pele in that first rotation. Maybe unwilling to move back in towards it. Don't want the Jade Dragons to have it for themselves either. But this does leave the Jade Dragons in a position now, with the Olympus Bolts taking Hades in first slot, to go back towards the set that we had seen attempted in Game 1.
Yeah.
You don't have that really tough counter matchup ahead of you anymore. Set doesn't necessarily have too many other counter matchups that you're overly concerned with. For the most part, if it is going to be a standard mage in mid for the Olympus Bolts, doesn't necessarily have to be, as you've already got some magic damage locked in with Hades. Well, just about everyone in the mage tab struggles up against Set.
Something that could be a pretty easy slot in for the Dragons.
Blades of light.
Especially if they decide to
Smite
go for
my
something
foes.
aggressive in the mid lane, or sorry, in the jungle as well, to accompany the set in the mid lane. Amaterasu, Ishtar are the lock-ins for the Dragons in response to the Hades first pick from the Bolts, and Mifflin, not an uncommon thing. It was something that the Bolts were doing a majority of the first portion of Phase 3. I mean, it was get Baskin on something you know he's going to be comfortable with, let him kind of learn the meta. That was what was happening with this Hades pick. Now he's got all that under wraps. The Hades just comes in as a kind of big power punch.
Yeah, I think Hades fits his style well. Baskin wants to be one of those playmakers for his team that can not only initiate the fight, but also end them on his own. And that full damage stack style of build for Hades, just incredibly powerful right now. If you go towards Tainted Steel, upgrade that starter. Essentially, when you're in Pillars of Agony, you're about defense capped, even with a full damage build after your starter item, which means that Hades gets the best of both worlds, tanky and immense damage, plus burst with Polynomicon. So I really do like this pick, a very consistent one at that. Smart from the Olympus Bolts to take the Osiris away as well. That seemed to be a major thorn in their side in the previous game. Scream was just able to get into that backline so consistently. Very seldom lost his 1v1s. The Olympus Bolts take away a strong piece of the Jade Dragons draft.
And they go straight back to the Danza, pick up for BaRRA, something that has been pretty nice for him. You called this a little while ago. It was just waiting for the Dragons to lock it in, but they do go for the set, knowing that the Bolt's probably not going to pick it up. And they get that, not necessarily needing to know the matchup you had already highlighted with the Pele banned by the Bolts. He feels a lot more confident this time around than in game number 1. But do you feel confident? I mean, the Osiris, we've seen it. With the Hades up there, you have to imagine it's into the jungle, and like you said, a piece kind of stripped away from the Dragons. Does the set feel comfortable enough with an Osiris coming at him in the jungle, whether he's in mid lane or in the jungle? Can he balance that out pretty well?
How Set initiates on the enemy mid laner is a blitzkrieg. It is so incredibly fast that it's difficult for an Osiris to prevent it from happening.
Yeah.
Can an Osiris fight up against a Set? Yes, very, very well. If Set's dedicating his escapability to close gap on his enemy, of course Osiris can find those situations, but I don't think it's enough where you have to say, man, Set doesn't feel great here. It still is a really strong counter matchup into the majority of the Mage tab or even the Hunter tab as well, and one that I expect Pegon to have a pretty decent run on in game number 3. Osiris will make it a bit more difficult for the Jade Dragons to decide who their Guardian selection would be. Generally, you don't want to play the more immobile picks. I was expecting to see an Atlas ban from the Olympus Bolts. When PBM's putting up 16,000, 17,000 damage in a game while affecting that many kills and simultaneously shredding defense and disrupting the team fight, and you look at Jake and he's done about 3,000 damage, you kind of want to stop feeding the hot hand. I wouldn't be too surprised if PBM goes towards his Atlas once more.
And especially after you said, hey, this like Osiris makes immobile gods feel worse, you would think the Ymir would then be like a shuffle, like, okay, Bolts, try to get him onto this pick to make sure that you can control it. Ymir does bring a lot of things to have to deal with, but the Atlas available, you had highlighted. And just, well, in general, a ton of picks for Mike to go to. They also, assuming that the set is going to go into the mid lane, we need a jungler. They're going to hold on to that one. And yeah, it's the Fafnir. Normally we see this with a double hunter composition. But admittedly, Set's going to be auto-attacking, like and Amaterasu, like it feels like the Coerce is still going to get a lot of value here.
Yeah, I like Fafnir a lot. If you're worried about Osiris just sticking to you, you can't really beat a double leap and the longest leap in the game at that when he's in a dragon stance. The disarm, very strong against some of the auto attackers that the Olympus Bolts have already drafted. Osiris and Danzaburou going to struggle up against that. Coerce going to really expedite your ability to deal with these neutral objectives. As you said, Amaterasu passive, plus coerce, plus auto attackers across the board from the top 3 from the Jade Dragons, just leads to a really strong Fafnir situation. The only concern you have as Fafnir into the composition as it stands from the Olympus Bolts is Hades' ability to really disrupt you upon Dragon Transformation.
Yeah.
The immediate silence, the immediate fear as you come out of it. It could be a bit detrimental in some of these engagements. Or even Danzaburou just tossing out the sake bottle and saying, hey, it's going to be here. Hopefully one of your teammates can deal with it first. Ares as the lock-in. Well, you can deal with some of that mobility. You got a little bit more magical damage, which might lend itself to the Olympus Bolts taking a physical mid. Double Hunter composition wouldn't be too bad. But instead, it's the Hell. This is an interesting paced draft from the Olympus Bolts. Feels like you're really aiming for the latest portions of the game. Bolster defense, one of the best support abilities in the game, giving over 50 protections both ways. You're going to have a lot more sustain now with Hell on your composition as well. Hades, an absolute menace at level 20. And to get you there, you've got this Osiris that should be able to alleviate pressure throughout the early. I like this draft from the Bolts, but Hell has not been winning too consistently recently, which does leave me a bit concerned.
Not a lot of innate anti-heal, though, on the Dragons. So maybe that's a nice little check mark for them. Although we've seen them build into it.
Rot.
Was wondering where the jungle pick was going to go for the Dragons. Scream has gone over to Cliodhna. And I can't think of a more fitting god given the kit that Cliodhna has to maybe match his name there. So real fun, double assassin. I mean, pretty much what we would have expected from the Dragons. You get the Ama as well. Does the synergy, I want to say, exist for both of these squads enough? Like, because you had mentioned the Bolts having an interesting draft that doesn't necessarily war with itself, but like Osiris wants to get way more hands-on than most of the rest of the team. Do the Dragons suffer from something similar?
When I look at the Dragons draft, the only concern is quadra physical, but we've seen plenty of teams play around that just well enough that it doesn't seem to matter too much. The ability for the Jade Dragons draft to just absolutely decimate objectives, I think, is incredibly strong. I'm not overly concerned with this composition. This does seem to me to be a draft from the Jade Dragons that generally will want to play a little bit more so in that early game, but that's the nature of the beast when you talk about any Jade Dragon set. The Olympus Bolts, on the other hand, I was all in on the top 3. Even BaRRaCCuDDa's out-of-pocket Danzaburou obsession as of recent, I've come to terms with it. The Ares and the Hell have left me in a little bit more of an iffy state with this draft. I really feel like this Hell could get jumped on throughout the early game pretty consistently. Breastplate of Valor, a very strong pickup. If we see Book of Thoth, Breastplate, you're not even sacrificing too much power. But until that Breastplate is done, I mean, this is a composition for the Jade Dragons that could make it just miserable to be an immobile mage.
That's something that Vin is going to have to deal with here. It's a tie set as of right now, 1-1. Who's going to take the lead? Let's find out in game number 3.
As we jump into game 3, I think Mifflin put it best, an interestingly paced game for the Olympus Bolts up against the Jade Dragons as we jump into game 3 of this best of 5. Remember, this is a seeding match for 3rd and 4th place between these two squads. I wouldn't have it any other way to be casting it with Trelly and having Doug as our observer to jump us in towards this one. Do you have any fears maybe for the Olympus Bolts? Because when I see an Ares, I like to think similar to Naja mentality. Big follow-up damage when you get that no escape, when you pull 1 to 2 people in there. But it really feels like some of these are kind of built as like answers to what the Dragons have, like, oh, you got a Fafnir. Okay, well, we'll just stop the Fafnir from doing something, as opposed to utilizing and kind of leveraging this pick as an initiation factor.
Yeah, I would say the Olympus Bolts comp to me looks a bit scattered at the moment. I mean, you have Jake who wants to... It seems like he wants to be the front line, right? He wants to get those big no escapes you were talking about, but he doesn't have the blink. He's got the sprint for now, so can't be that immediate initiation. LASBRA does have the blink, so he could do that quite well, but you're going to need to be peeling for Ven because you got to assume fineokay, Scream, and Pegon are going to be absolutely diving this Hell, this immobile mage, with all they have. You got an Aegis, sure, and the anti-heal already coming through because of Pegon starting that Tainted Steel, so it's going to be very difficult to try and keep this Hell alive. And then you just got BaRRA and Jake on their typical duo lane that they've been running many times. I mean, Danzaburou and then insert aggressive Guardian here. It really doesn't matter what it's going to be in that slot. So I think the comp's a bit scattered. The Jade Dragons definitely have ease of execution down, but hey, the Olympus Bolts are playing what they like. They're not caring about the meta too much, and I can respect that.
While the 2v2 in duo, so slamming through the 2v2 in mid. He's going pretty handily over to the Olympus Bolts as far as their clear is concerned. LASBRA with the Mannequin Scepter, Osiris able to clear out those waves pretty easily alongside Venenu. And one thing that was kind of brought up before jumping into the game was maybe the struggle that this hell might have through the early games because of how heavy the dive is by the Jade Dragons. But do you think LASBRA on this Osiris is maybe enough of like a pseudo deterrent to kind of keep the Dragons away from this mid?
Early on, yes, because Osiris is just great at doing that with the Mannequin Scepter start, but as the game continues, I got a feeling the Jade Dragons aren't going to be too intimidated by just the Osiris. You're going to need Baskin, and you're going to need Awesome Jake there as well to deter just straight up diving onto Venenu, but we've seen Hell play to great effect before, as long as you can use that cleanse, use that speed up as well as you can. And I think that's probably why Awesome Jake also has that spread, not only for himself, but for his team. BBM going to take a little bit of damage here. Did not get hit by the taunt though, so should be just fine.
I think if that taunt hits, he might be dead. A little extra damage on Venenu. Scream dives in, but the Aegis only delays the inevitable. Scream with the Jade Dragons picks up first blood for his squad. fineokay will just sit back and watch as 2 invade towards his blue buff. LASBRA at least getting a small consolation prize on that side of the map.
Yeah, they're going to trade out red for blue, which I guess in this case you're putting Ven even further behind to get Pegon and Scream even further ahead, which is going to be the call there, whereas fineokay is going to lose his blue buff and lose a bit of farm, but LASBRA actually takes the speed buff in the process, so besides the first blood, jungle camp-wise, that's a win for the Olympus Bolts, but again, getting first blood onto Scream as well as Ven losing his red buff and a bit of that wave in the second wave really does start to add up. And I think Pegon's not going to let this hell just exist for free, right? There's going to be a lot of bullying going the way of this hell. And I guess Ven probably knew that, just locking this god in, right? You want to make sure the healer's dead first. That amount of sustain can really ruin a team fight. But this early on just means that your farm is gonna definitely suffer for it.
It's definitely going to hurt.
Like that.
Yeah.
That kind of hurt too.
That also hurts. Hell does a sneaky amount of damage, and I always sometimes forget about that. Even whenever I've seen plenty of Hells, even when Hell was meta for a little while, you sometimes forget just how much this god can do. While the healing may not be massive during the early game, the damage is certainly there. LASBRA's 1v1 against Scream. Goes about even in that regard. BaRRaCCuDDa holding on to the beads. He's got Jake following him back inside. Olympus Bolts dual lane still getting aggressive.
Scream.
And Scream on the bottom side of the rotation. Level 5 for the Cliodhna has at least 1 charge bolt. Cuts off the path for BaRRA. And it should be a dead Danzaburou. And 2 kills for Scream.
Yeah, it seemed like the Bolts were playing cautiously, but they had no idea that Scream was behind them. I mean, they were just playing cautiously because they were a bit worried about the wave and the amount of HP that BaRRaCCuDDa had. They definitely didn't know they were getting wrapped around there. So great opportunity there for Scream to give himself the 2nd kill of the game, as well as his own 2nd kill. So he's going to be getting the full Jotuns on that back. Probably just is going to be farming up gold here. And this is exactly what you want, because Cliodhna's early game, not the best. Osiris' early game is great. So getting off to this kind of start really just fast tracks you to the late game, where that Cliodhna could actually come online, start chunking through the walls, doing big burst damage, things like that. So definitely a great start here for the Jade Dragons and Scream specifically. I don't imagine these ganks are going to slow down anytime soon.
Scream has been active across the map pretty much everywhere except for at least this right side. fineokay has kind of been left towards his own island on this Ama, and he's doing pretty well for himself, even out clearing a Hades this early on. Baskin now the one being pushed back under the tier 1 tower, that we won't see an invade from fineokay and his team. You better believe that if that Pyromancer was up, Scream and the rest of the squad would have probably already tried to take that, but instead they'll have to settle for a greater Scorpion early on, as the Jade Dragons have pulled themselves up about a 700 gold lead so far off the back of those 2 kills for Scream.
Yep, it's going to start to add up. I think it's just because the Golden Blade's helping out. fineokay is getting some good chip damage there with trying to clear the wave, and Baskin can't just insta-clear. He was going for more poke more than anything. Awesome Jake will be able to steal the minis away from PandaCat and then get out like a bandit. But I'm not expecting no escape to get too much value for I mean, anytime soon because of all the CC immune ults you see on the side of the Jade Dragons and the beads that are available. More so just using those chains to try and get aggressive, and it looks like Awesome Jake could be the target here of the toll, but Jake actually turned around. He wanted to fight for a second.
And he missed the chain, and Panda misses the Sun Swords after. So, Awesome Jake will be fine. Doesn't have to use anything. Meanwhile, he gets 2 ultimates for the price of what? A single offering stolen from his side of the map, while his team is able to pick up offerings elsewhere across to even that one out. I'm Awesome Jake. At the end of the day, I'm screaming worth, and I'm also probably just, you know, sort of a question mark is like, what just happened? Like, what's going on over here?
And he was able to steal back the offering,
Oh,
so
no.
it was 2 ult for just about nothing.
So it's just all dubs for Jake.
Yeah, all dubs. He's able to walk away with the green buff around his belt, feeling confident on that side of the map. But this is definitely a slower pace than I expected, especially with LASBRA on the Osiris, right? Scream got off to that booming start, 2-0 on the Cliodhna. But I think LASBRA would try and get aggressive somewhere, whether it be on fineokay, who does have the teleport, you know, trying to force that dash and then look for an engage. If you can time Lord of the Afterlife right at the end of Dazzling Offensive, it's difficult, but certainly doable. You can find some opportunities to try and fight there, but it's more so just been farming and following around Ven, sort of trying to make sure that this hell isn't under too much fire in the mid lane because of Pegon. This set really does just offer a ton of poke and an all-in potential, just like that.
No, the one in the fire was PBM.
No, he does have,
Because
yeah.
Jake was walking
Jake's
up
got
to
fire
him
too.
and hit him with it. Well, Jake was shooting the fire. PBM was under the fire because of it.
And he said, burn.
He did yell burn really menacingly. If someone walked up to me and said burn like that, I'm probably just walking away hoping that he doesn't actually burn me. We do have the Oracle Harpies go to the Gold Fury. That's the Gold Fury. Oracle Harpies go to the Jade Dragons around the Gold Fury. Could you imagine if the Gold Fury could get active and take camps away from people?
I think the Gold Fury should be able to walk out of its little pit. You know, just wherever. Just recap.
Someone leashes it and says, I don't think about that, buddy, and he keeps walking at him.
Yeah, just chases you until you die, or you go back to base somehow, because the Gold Fury really does swing, and especially this early on. You know, that there is a lot of damage the Jade Dragons do have with the double Cliodhna ult charge, and of course the damage that Pegon could dish out if he rotates over. But that's the thing, you can't just pull this early on and expect PBM to not take that much damage. You know, early Gold Fury sometimes are worth it and can extend your lead, but you got to remember how much Mike would take from a play like that. I think that despite the fact that Ishtar has great clear, BaRRa's been able to keep PandaCat pretty much underneath tower. I mean, great pressure from this Danzaburou. And I guess that's just what you get when you play only one god for like a whole weekend. You know, you learn the ins and outs of the pressure.
Is it one? I think BaRRaCCuDDa has only played one game that wasn't a Danzaburou. And I want to say it was an Ishtar game.
Nah,
So
he only plays the Tanuki, man. If you're telling me anything else, I'm thinking you're lying.
I mean, I can always look it back, but I'm pretty sure it's only a single game that he has not been on the Tanuki. I want to talk about, you know, sometimes we try and fish for information on teams. Most of the time, they don't give it to us. You know, when we talk about, you know, is there any kind of strat to picking up this kind of a thing? You know, are you trying to hide anything? Maybe Olympus Bolts Hunter is just like, you know what, Tanuki feels good. I'm just gonna play him, unless they make me play something else. So far, it's been working pretty well for BaRRaCCuDDa.
BaRRa woke up on Thursday and said, I choose
Tanuki.
Tanuki.
He spun the Hunter God Wheel and landed on the Tanuki and said, all right, that looks good.
And that's it. There was never any question. The team has not faulted him yet for it, though. You know what? We may win, we may lose, but BaRRa's got the rocket. He's got some pressure over on the left side of the map, and we know eventually he's going to hit us with that extra CC. I'm surprised that Jake hasn't went to, you know, the CC chain gods that he's been going to as of recent, but I mean, Ares has chains. Maybe they don't need CC chains.
Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't indeed. Olympus Bolts, though, falling a little bit behind to the Dragons. His lead is not extended very much off of those 2 kills. In fact,
700
ever since
gold.
those 2 kills, it is sat at that 700 gold plateau that the Jade Dragons have built up. Maybe, never mind, LASBRA's only going to throw a sickle towards Scream and leave that one alone. I thought maybe we would see a little bit of a fight back from the Bolts to try and grab an objective or a fight. But now with PBM rotating over, it's the Jade Dragons who want to try and extend their lead, put an extra little hill in this plateau to see if they can build up some extra gold. Awesome Jake goes in, does not actually able to steal that one with the help of Baskin. And now the Olympus Bolts, who were down 700 gold, only down about 300 gold at this point.
Yeah, great time by LASBRA there. He was watching that one go down. And it seemed like Awesome Jake just stepped up. Looks like he will use the ultimate there to pull back in Pegon. He didn't want to use the beads. Maybe you should have.
Oh, one more tick of that chain would have been enough on the Pegon. Waits to use the beads way too late. Maybe regretting that decision again. Remember, Held can do a lot of damage in that Breastplate of Valor. While it is a defense item, with that Book of Thought, it turns it into slightly an offensive tool.
Yeah, that's what it was. Pegon's like, he went Breastplate. I'm sitting just fine. I'm not beads. He's like, whoa, that kind of hurt. Whoa, whoa, hey, whoa, whoa. And then he had to beads and just
like
absolutely get out there. So now that does open up the door, though. Awesome Jake can come back, try and find another ult on a Pegon, and those chains will be able to find a kill next time unless Pegon hits level 12, which he definitely will, unless for some reason he doesn't get any farm by now until Awesome Jake's ult comes back up. Still, I'd be looking for another target, right? I'm looking to try and pull with no escape whenever those beads are down. And I think Pegon still could die, especially if LASBRA's there this time. A lot of damage coming out of this Berserker Shield Osiris, especially with that Mannequin Scepter. And with Lord of the Afterlife, the chase down potential is going to be there. But one objective pulled, one stolen away by the Olympus Bolts. That Gold Fury still has not been looked at. The Jade Dragons have shown us, though, with that Frenzy popped and that Draconic Transformation, those objectives do get shredded through. I mean, they die pretty quickly, so the Olympus Bolts have to make sure their vision on both sides of the map are on point. Can't have any of these objectives getting snuck for.
No, the Bolts were able to sniff out the last one, but do need to be wary of the Gold Fury and potential Fire Giant. It's not just having Draconic Transformation, the Frenzy for this Fafnir, but fineokay with his passive to make things go a little bit easier for the Dragons as well. The Olympus Bolts have been keeping very wary, keeping wards over in the mid-camp zone to spot out any rotations that direction. BaRRaCCuDDa actually picking up a small lead over PandaCat. Very minuscule at this point, probably going back and forth between the two. As an attempted push into the mid lane by the Bolts, thwarted by an ultimate drop by Scream.
It's going to be a double Shoguns, I imagine, so even more auto attack damage coming from the Jade Dragons. This fineokay got his a bit ago. You imagine PBM wants it as well. I mean, it's just, you're not always having that aura, let's be honest. fineokay hasn't left lane yet, so it's probably better that PBM just grabs it just in case you're going for an objective and need that extra damage. PandaCat rather, did not want to bead, so just used his ultimate there for that sake bottle. But it's going to make sure that his ult's down if the Olympus Bolts want to head over to left. Doesn't look like the Bolts want to head over to left, but Scream is heading over towards duo lane. Possibly just for the Interceptor, but also checking to see if BaRRaCCuDDa was going to step up too far.
Scream
he
gets
might.
the third
He doesn't
kill.
know.
BaRRaCCuDDa's in. And what an immediate turnaround and regret in BaRRaCCuDDa. Look at the disappointment on his face, like, all right, I didn't know that there was, a clean over here. I definitely had that, but unfortunately for him, he doesn't have it. The Olympus Bolts do start gathering around this Gold Fury for themselves.
They do, but without BaRRa, I don't imagine a pull is going to be in their future. Did get the beads down, but PandaCat goes back level 14, so is able to pick up the Aegis in that regard. So great bait there from Panda. I don't think he did anything in particular besides, like, walk at BaRRa, and he's like, your ult's down, you can't walk at me, and then realized, like, oh, he was walking at me because Scream was here. Like, that makes way more sense. Probably is going to get some wards on the back in that case, but see fineokay making that rotation over to left lane. You know what that means. Gold Fury is going to be picked up here shortly. That Draconic Transformation already through. I'm thinking give this one up, but the Olympus Bolts are trying.
Well, I don't think the Bolts realized that full Frenzy and that chorus were already ready to go. The Jade Dragons this time able to secure the objective for themselves. What can the Bolts do in response, though? Pyromancer up in just a few seconds, about another 15 to 30 before that one spawns back in. But Dragons have already made their way back to base, can already regroup. And so now the Dragons have reestablished their lead. What was 700, dipped down to about 300-400. Now back up to a little over 1,000, maybe 1,200 for the Dragons.
I was glad seeing that 700 gold just stay so stagnant, but that's not how the game works. Eventually, one team's going to find the edge, and the Jade Dragons have consistently been able to find picks. More often than not, where Scream is. He's got 2 kills and 1 assist, been a part of all 3. And BaRRaCCuDDa, unfortunately, has been on the the mean end of those ganks, and it looks like once again, Jade Dragons go for the Pyromancer. This time they'll actually confirm it, not stolen away. So both neutral objectives in the Jade Dragons' pocket, but that's pretty much it. That's all the fighting we're gonna see for the time being, except for BaRRa. He's like, you know what, I wanted that fight, and I'm standing at this tower line. If I figure out that Scream's on the way, I'll back up, but besides that, I'm gonna stick as far up as possible, try and bait out Panda while his beats are still down for another 38 seconds or so.
PBM stuns and jumps over Jake to make sure he can confirm the offering on his team's side of the map. One away from being able to pick up the obelisk for the Jade Dragons. That trebuchet that was picked up by the Bolts earlier, still sitting in mid, has not been sent down just yet. Fight to the left side on BaRRaCCuDDa. Beads and a just gone from the Danza. A pull by Awesome Jake will grab two into the tower. Scream loses out on the ages. Rocket comes in, but a good dash to get away from it. And the return fire. BaRRaCCuDDa has been baited back into the fight. But Venenu has got the heals to keep BaRRa alive, but not for much longer. Pegon TP's in and takes him down.
Wow, what a beautiful body block there. I mean, BaRRaCCuDDa had the rocket, but just could not connect onto Scream. LASBRA on the way, trying to find someone. Does have the blink and Lord of the Afterlife behind Scream, but a good shell, make sure he gets out.
Instant shell, instant regret by LASBRA. Another TP in for Pegon, a stun by Mike. Jake walks up to his own demise, a killing spree for Pegon. Venenu not gonna live for much longer as PandaCat puts him in the dirt. And the Jade Dragons grab 4 for none.
They could not find a single kill. The Olympus Bolts were close. I was looking at Baskin. I was like, what a huge rotation this Hades could make. But he was just under the tower, scrapping with fineokay. So not going to be able to get anything out of that. The Jade Dragons come up massive. 3 kills for Pegon, 2 for Scream that he already had, and of course 2 for PandaCat. That's a total of 7. And again, so many attempts for the Olympus Bolts to find something. They just had no answers back. The peel was absurd. I think the shell that Pegon picked up was doing numbers as well. LASBRA should have been able to find something. It was a great blink, great ultimate. I think Scream gambled his life a few different times there. BaRRaCCuDDa was close, but a good body block from Mike. And then LASBRA was close, but a great shell pop from Pegon. And they have so much DPS. The frenzy pop, the shoguns, the ranged auto attacks from Panda really did start to add up. And now I don't imagine, I mean, that's way too many times that BaRRaCCuDDa's been baited by the Jade Dragons. He's gotta feel like he's gotta stay out of that tower line.
LASBRA, you can probably see the look in his eyes. He was going for the Lord of the Afterlife. He jumps in, and as he's about to land, he sees shelling, and he just goes, oh.
Yep, unlucky.
I see I've made a mistake. Jake will pull in just PBM. Rocket goes right under the dragon. Instead, it's BaRRaCCuDDa slamming into Scream, who will be just fine. Dash in by fineokay. Maybe starts this fight back in. Stun onto BaRRaCCuDDa. Venenu gets a heal. fineokay chained up by Awesome Jake. PBM brought down by Baskin, but immediately returned in. And now Pegon has joined the fray, but not going to go any further than that. The Jade Dragons have made a 1-for-1 trading Baskin for Mike.
Yeah, Baskin for Mike. Not the best trade, especially if you're trying to fight after the fact that it looks like the Olympus Bolts can't really go for. But at least we're able to get aggressive, right? They finally found an opportunity. Used that ultimate to pull in PolarBearMike. He used his ultimate to immune it, but the chains and that Pillar of Agony from the Hades was enough to lock him down. But take a look at this. It looks like there is a bit of a brawl between LASBRA and fineokay. Remember, fineokay's ult stand, but we'll be able to dash away. I was talking about a little bit of posturing towards the left, but immediately backed up. Primal Fury's going to spawn in here in about 8 seconds. It looks like neither team set up for an instant pull. 1-for-1 trade, again, definitely still in favor of the Jade Dragons, but finally the Olympus Bolts found something.
Yeah, the Bolts on the board, so no blank this time around for the Order side team. BaRRaCCuDDa, though, I think you're right to highlight the number of times that he's been baited. Not even just in this game, in this set in general by PandaCat. To either rocket in towards a fight or have the rocket baited out, maybe even towards just trying to escape in these cases, but coming up unsuccessful for BaRRaCCuDDa, 0-3 on the Danzaburou this time. It almost makes me wonder, Trelly. If the Bolts lose this one, if BaRRaCCuDDa doesn't have a great performance, do we see the Bolts? Maybe tell BaRRa, why don't you try something else out next time? Or do you think he just digs in his heels and
What
just
is it?
says,
Have you
no,
seen
I'm,
that guy?
I'm going with the Danza.
Well, when I opened the door for him today, he said, I'm playing Danza. And then
He actually had a Danza t-shirt on
yeah,
under his,
I'm
under his
only
jersey.
playing Danza. So no, I don't think they're going to tell him that. Primal Fury is started up here, but it looks like LASBRA could be under a bit of trouble. Pegon answering back a ton of damage, but the Jade Dragons have not dropped this one. With Ben here, decent steal opportunity.
Scream goes towards BaRRA. Silence is good. Heal from Ben. May have just baited Scream a little too far in. Chained up, can't get in the wall. And the Bolts return a kill back to the Dragons, but Pegon pays it with one of his own. Kill onto LASBRA, jump in by PBM. No escape, will not pull anybody through. It's just chains onto PBM. Jake, though, doesn't have any further follow-up. Another 1-for-1, this time both junglers.
Yeah, it looks like too much damage coming from Pegon. Gonna have to back up here, but Baskin still does have that Pillar of Agony and the ultimate. I'm thinking Set's got to be the target, right? So much damage coming from the Set, and it looks like a lot of damage returned. Will Baskin be able to blink in? No, because that Primal Fury's up and it's down.
Rocket in by BaRRaCCuDDa. Hits fineokay, not the ideal target. And the sake bottle jumped away.
Blink ult.
By Mike.
Oh, what a hammer.
Baskin, the one person who didn't want to be hammered in that grouping of 4. Does end up beating that one. Pegon, all the while, after being forced out of the fight, has been stealing away the camps to the Olympus Bolts map. With the Fury to the Dragons, that is a nice... We go from a 700 gold plateau of the Dragons earlier to now a 7,600 gold.
I mean, Mike may have just saved a ton of gold and definitely at least a kill on the fineokay there. Didn't have the beats, didn't have the ultimate quite yet. But that Blink Pillar of Agony should have set up something, but that hammer made sure to put Baskin back in combat. And now the Jade Dragons already returned and looking towards a Fire Giant or a Pyromancer. Looks like the Fire Giant is the call. Scream drops the ultimate, and it's only LASBRA here right now.
LASBRA has ult, but stunned by Mike. And Dragons get the fire, maybe a little bit more after. LASBRA jumps out with the Lord of the Afterlife. And the Dragons do get more than just the Fire Giant. Younger one of the Pyromancer also picked up. The Dragons now extend their lead to nearly 10,000 gold in the blink of an eye.
It seems to be still that Pegon needs to die, right? If the Olympus Bolts want to win a team fight or this game, let's start with the team fight. They got to kill this 4-0 set. I mean, there is a ton of damage coming through. It's been clear that PandaCat is also dishing out a ton, but the amount of poke that Pegon is applying is just too much to deal with. I mean, it doesn't look like much, but I watched LASBRA try and get involved, and I think that's been Pegon's job. Zone out LASBRA. If he can't get to the backline on this Osiris, then PandaCat gets the free cast, and he has been. I mean, the Odibo procs, the kin size procs have been flying. And who's supposed to deal with that hunter? This Osiris. So I'm saying, find someone on the kill streak. Maybe just look for a kill. That would help out. But Scream died last time, and the fight still was not enough for the Olympus Bolts to open up any sort of doors. Now the Jade Dragons are going to be able to push up, and the Bolts are doing their signature. Let's run away. Let's stay as far away from the team with fire as possible. Grab a tier 1. But with Shoguns, with the amount of DPS they have, they're not stopping for anyone. This left side bird has to be the next target.
Baskin, the first one here from the Bolts to try and defend. The Jade Dragons will recognize the Bolts have shown up left and move mid instead. Tier 2 there and a tier 2 in solo lane still left standing for the Dragons to knock down. That'll continue to add gold to the pockets of the Jade Dragons. They'll go ahead and steal away some of the jungle while they're at it. Scream grabbing the speed buff. Back RP camps, probably a blue and a tier 2. And that'll still leave nearly 2 minutes of the power play to the Jade Dragons. How's the Olympus Bolts even try and fight back into this? It doesn't feel like they have that great of a base defense, but looks like they're not even going to get a chance to put on display Trelly because Frenzy is there, right Phoenix gone. The Jade Dragons will take down Baskin. Scream finds the first one. Awesome Jake picked off. The Olympus Bolts are now down 3 because Pegon is barreling through the back line. A double onto BaRRaCCuDDa, and only LASBRA left standing, and he will watch as his Titan and his team fall, and the Dragons move up 2-1 in the set.
Yeah, they just showed exactly how much DPS comes with that composition. The Shoguns, the Frenzy, Draconic Transformation. Oh, you were late to the Phoenix? We're just going to take it. Baskin said, I'm going to save the Phoenix. Blinks in, uses that Pillar of Agony, dies before it even goes off at that point. they just had way too much damage, and I think PandaCat goes in completely untouched. The front line, and we're going to count Pegon as the front line because he was also there, made sure that LASBRA could not get in. No one was checking these carries. That's just a Jade Dragons win through and through.
Tony, I was going to ask you, like, what do the Bolts do to defend their Phoenix? What tools
No,
they have?
can't. None.
The problem is that they didn't get an opportunity to use any of them. Jade Dragons barrel stuff the right side of the map. And they take down the Titan, take game number 3. We'll give it to a break. We'll come back with game 4.
Well, with pressing style, the Dragons take game number 3, put themselves on set point in Mifflin. I mean, this one, you go back, you look at the way that the game is drafted, you go back to what you were saying, and it felt like the Dragons were going to be able to maybe abuse the hell early on. They get ahead early on. Again, a couple of stumbles throughout there. The Bolts don't let them just have it for free, but the stumbles are far less than what they were in game number 2, and the Dragons have a much more commanding control of this one.
Yeah, thankful for the Dragons to make my job on this test pretty easy, because there's not a whole lot to break down in that game, because just about everything goes their way. After the draft phase, we had assumed that the Dragons would play through hyper-aggression in mid. They played through hyper-aggression in mid. Pegon simply was able to get active pretty early on in this one, and when that is the case, generally things tend to line up afterwards. It was an early game with an early lead for the Jade Dragons, transitions very well into objectives, transitions very well into subsequent team fights as well. The only thing that I would say is that the Olympus Bolts really did look pretty decent around the cleanses. I thought that Ben had a couple of really good cleanses this game. That would have been, hard to escape situations otherwise, but hell, able to get him out of those. Otherwise, I don't love the composition from the Olympus Bolts. The Jade Dragons play a Dragon-style draft. The Olympus Bolts play individual picks that I associate with each of them. Ben plays Hell, no surprise to me. He's done that in the past. Awesome Jake plays Ares. Sure, it's a hyper-aggressive pick. BaRRaCCuDDa gets on Danzaburou. I guess that's his thing now. But when all of these come together, somehow this draft was less than the sum of its parts.
Yes. I do have to just kind of piggyback on something you said, but Bear's really kind of ruining my whole, hey, there's Danzaburou. PandaCat's the only one who plays that thing, and that Panda hasn't played it in a while, and Bear is slam-locking it. Unfortunately, here it goes 0-4-2, despite being successful over the last couple of days. 4-0-7 for Panda, Mike with 10 assists, and a 6-0 game for Pegon. Hyper-aggression through mid. Like you said, it's kind of cut and dry when it comes down to how this one unfolds. And now, with the way things had worked out, the Bolts maybe going to have to go back to the draft, refigure how either to put some of these pieces together and change some others, or ultimately shuffle everything around a little bit. Except the Danzaburou, because that's been a very consistent thing for them so far this weekend. We'll see, I guess, in Game 4 what they decide to do.
Do you think BaRRaCCuDDa, this thought has rolled through his head? He's like, I've been playing a lot of Danzaburou recently. I haven't exactly been hiding that strategy. Nobody's banning it from me. What's up with that? What's going on there? Why do they keep letting me get it? I wonder.
Yeah, truly remarkable and wondrous. That's the word. I was trying to figure out look, it's 6:30. I have a little bit of an excuse. Probably. We can figure out, though, what kind of shifts they're going to make. I mean, at this point, the Danzaburou, while it has been questioned by a few, Mike actually being one of them, it's worked out well enough, save for, I guess, now 2 games in a row. Maybe that'll come back for him. Maybe it won't. I'm wondering, though, if you took that last draft, you had mentioned, the sum of its parts not necessarily matching up to how good individual performance can be. Which one of those do you change, or is it too many of them that you have to change to make it all work out?
I think you could change any number one of those picks to make the other picks work in a composition, right? But if I were to look at any individual pick as maybe the primary reason that draft didn't really have the cohesion, I would probably say it's the Hell in mid. I felt like with an Ares, even in ideal situations where we're finding pools, the follow-up wasn't quite there. The draft wasn't really based around getting to the absolute latest portion of the game, playing around that sustain, drag-out fights around Fire Giant or Gold Fury. So I would have liked to have seen maybe just a bit more of a standard mage out of the mid lane.
Yeah, something that packs a little more punch early on, I think, and that's what you were lacking. You had mentioned the mobility of the Hell, and so maybe that's something they need to try and tackle. The other side, though, things from top to bottom seem to go pretty well for him, right? The set obviously worked out. The Bolts were the ones that banned the Pele. Do you think that the best way to describe it, do you think that makes sense to ban the pick that was helping you beat something that the Dragons were trying to go for in Game 1?
You can ban Pele there just about every time, and I'm not super concerned about it so long as you're also controlling the set.
Yeah.
Maybe take the set for yourself, or if you think maybe you've done enough or you've got some other pick that you could really deal with them with, but it's looked to me like they banned Pele, said, okay, cool, we don't have to play against the Pele, and maybe the set was an afterthought, and it was, oh, oops, they caught us, you know? Because that set really just got away with a bit too much. Maybe in that position you leave both available so that you have the opportunity to go towards that counter selection, but I think it is a bit interesting. Not something I would have chosen to ban the Pele in that position.
Well, they're going to have to make some shifts. We'll figure out where they make them as we jump into picks and bans here for game number 4. Bolts are going to be the first pick. And again, last time they were first pick, which was just a game ago, they did ban out some more targeted Dragons picks, but also that Pele that we've been talking about, the Naja, had been high on that list. They first picked the Hades. A lot of options for them if it goes into a similar route. The Morrigan banned away. Kurdanos banned away alongside the Daji. So limiting factors, Mifflin, a lot of these 4 have been consistent over this week. For the Dragons, the question will be if the Nox wants to join up there, something to limit Jake a little. Right now for the Bolts, it's Pele, no Pele. Big money, no whammies. And it will be the Pele. And so you had mentioned controlling the set if you're going to ban this. Do you want to see, I mean, first picking set seems a little egregious in the current meta. Do you want to see them, how do you handle it from this kind of spot?
I don't think that first pick set is necessarily a bad thing, but you could draft a mage that has a good deal of safety, something that doesn't need to worry so much about the actual 1v1 matchup. You could draft maybe a jungler that has really good CC lockdown so that it could catch out set when he goes for these hyper-aggressive dive styles of play. You could hedge your bets and say that the set just isn't going to come. And I think that's a pretty decent avenue as well. It's not as if the Jade Dragons are completely reliant on that pick. I am surprised that it's the Pele ban so consistently from the Olympus Bolts from this first pick position, though. I don't necessarily think that the Jade Dragons have shown that they are incredibly likely to go towards that pick. We've seen it once or twice. We know that Scream is very capable, but Scream loves getting on anything and get his hands dirty in the early game. So it seems to me that things like the Osiris, the Erlong Shen are other picks that Scream is very likely to move towards.
Yeah.
I am curious. I would love to hear why the Olympus Bolts have continually banned out the Pele. Maybe it is that they are just trying to get set for themselves, and the Jade Dragons got the jump on them last time.
Athena.
Well, they get the set this time around. Osiris and Hades lock in the top 3 for the Bolts. Other side, Ama, Ishtar, and Athena locked in for the top 3 from the Dragons. The Athena feels a little double-edged, right? It's not just something that Mike can play really well, and actually can be thrown quite around because, again, always worth mentioning, Dragons coach Cherio loves Athena jungle. Maybe it's not something that in meta right now is a go-to, but if you can convince Scream to make it happen, I'm sure they'd love to. But having that pick available to them and being able to limit another pick of specifically Jake's to limit down.
Baskin as well.
Baskin, oh yeah, good point.
Yep.
Especially considering the Hades still has some flexibility. Ymir, Ares, banned away by the Dragons. Cliodhna and the Scylla banned away by the Bolts. You had mentioned like a mage that either has some safety, mage that maybe has some CC. Anybody that you want to see particularly in the bottom 2 for the Dragons?
Anyone in particular? I mean, you have to take into account God Pool, so maybe with considering what Pegon's gone towards in the last 6 games, things like Scylla could be all right there, some CC immunity, some slow immunity as well, but I think the Athena is going to do a lot to limit what set is capable of, because it's pretty telegraphed.
You said it
when
was
he
like good
dives in.
CC as well to kind of cancel him out.
Good CC, he dashes in, catch him with the Confound, or if you know he's going to all-in commit, your Athena doesn't even necessarily need to be there immediately. The Defender of Olympus for that damage mitigation from range just helps out in some of those situations as well. I think that the Jade Dragons can be pretty adaptable with their mid lane selection here. Wouldn't be surprised if we see Scream selection first. Susano locked in.
Wow.
And there's that displacement as well. I mean, just another way to disrupt that all-in engagement, that all-in initiation from set Osiris and now Hades too. I mean, that's a dive composition through and through.
Is worth mentioning, we have seen enough Susano, well, maybe not enough going mid, but we have seen Pegon play it to the point where it might need to be worried about. I was actually going to talk about Maui. Someone we talked about actually kind of heavily coming into this. Mike played it a little yesterday. We've been seeing Jake play it. Didn't see too much of it. You can see his win rate, 45%. Maybe not screaming wide amounts of success, but I think a lot of it depends on the team around you. And Jake's going to go back to it. You had highlighted it as outside or beyond the Nox, which also did not get banned this game.
I thought it would have been Nox here, really.
It would have been the pickup. And I guess you get a similar style, or at least how you had described it earlier, something that gives him the Jake-style TM of support for the Maui.
Yeah, the non-committal initiation, I think, is how I'm going to coin that one. Surely BaRRaCCuDDa doesn't go from Danzaburou, his new flame, to his OG Jingwei. Jingwei doesn't even particularly have a phenomenal matchup here into the majority of the Jade Dragons. I mean, knock up from Typhoon, I suppose, pretty easy to be dashed out. You know,
but can he break the Danzaburou streak? I mean, really?
I mean, why would you? Why would you, right? I don't think you could leave too many of these L's at the feet of Danzaburou. I think maybe one or two of these matches where when he was first picking it, for sure, that was looking pretty rough when you could just draft 2 or 3 walls to deal with them. But Cupid as the selection, I think, fits the Olympus Bolts composition very well. There is a clear, concise idea of how they're going to approach the team fights with a draft like this. The displacement from Maui into the immense CC combo between Hades and Cupid, the chase down potential of an Osiris in a set. I like the 5-man core of the Olympus Bolts. The point I was going to make is I'm not fully sure that Susanoo is headed to the jungle just yet. We've seen, and it was in this matchup, we've seen Pegon up against Ven go towards things like Susanoo, or literally just Susanoo, to go for hyper-aggressive red buff invades. This could be, if the Atlas gets locked in, that weird pseudo roll swap time bomb, Atlas mid sometimes, Susanoo jungle sometimes, but Atlas is piloted by Scream, Susanoo by Pegon. I'm curious, man. The Jade Dragons,
Scratless.
They're good at keeping us guessing.
I honestly, and I almost hate that this is true, but the Scratless mid seems way more likely than the Scream Athena jungle, like with overwhelming notes of Cherio from the Dragons. Also, and you know, this is just something that I was thinking. We saw fineokay in the camera there, kind of hanging out with Mike,
bear your burdens.
throwing hearts around, stuff like that. I know we always sit them by like order of role, like that. You know, fineokay is in the solo chair, Mike's over there in the support. Do you think that even though like they don't have the 3 other guys in there, just because of contamination reasons, essentially, we like still have to have them that far? Like they could be hanging out.
You know,
Maybe they don't want to be near each other.
yeah, 6 feet, right? Social distancing. Make sure that they're doing all right for each other. That's for their safety,
Yeah,
not
their
for
safety.
us.
Oh yeah, not for us. Well, I think that's part of why the others aren't here. Atlas locked in, and Mifflin. This is the standard that the Dragons like to leave us with, where we get to play shuffle them around. Do you have any inclinations for yourself as to where things will go?
If it were a standard, well, it's not a standard composition.
Yeah,
Why
there's an
even play
Athena
that
and an
game?
Atlas and an Ama. There's no mage.
Yeah, I mean,
Atlas kind of feels magey sometimes.
Susanoo, Pegon, Scream, Atlas,
And it's in mid, I guess.
Amaterasu solo, and then your duo lane
Would be
right
the-
next to each other.
Yeah.
I think that's where I got it. I'm not gonna say roles. You notice I didn't mention any
Yeah,
roles.
I do notice you didn't mention any
I'm gonna
roles.
assign God to player. I think that's my out.
And you know what? I tend to agree with you here, because out of the things we've seen this year, that's pretty much all that matches up with them. The Bolts have something a lot more simple to look at. So if you're comparing these in the 5-on-5, and specifically in the conversation for the Bolts of staying alive in this set, have they put themselves in a position to be able to do so with a draft like this?
Yeah, I mean, I love this Olympus Bolts draft. I think it's more cohesive than what we had seen previously. As far as just individual god tiers are concerned, these are all very strong picks that are played by everyone in the league for good reason. The Olympus Bolts could very easily take this to 5.
Well, it's game number 4. The Dragons potentially sealing themselves as 3rd seed. And we're going to find out in game 4 how the Dragon Shuffle is played and where everything lies out with J-Mac and Trelly.
Will we see our second game 5 of the day, our second game 5 of the event? Because up until now, it's either been 3-0s or 3-1 matchups. We had one earlier today go the full distance. Maybe the Olympus Bolts can do so here. Weird draft, weird compositions out of the Jade Dragons. We'll see where it all lands. It's not actually going to be where everything thought
Unlucky,
may have gone
man.
the way for Mifflin. Instead, it will be Scream taking the Athena jungle PBM on the Atlas for the support this time around. It's J-Mac, Charlie, and Doug one more time for game number 4. Now throw to you. How do you feel about Athena jungle now? Because we have seen in the past by teams like the Kings for Captain Twig. But what's your thought on it for Scream on the Dragons?
I personally love the Athena jungle. I'm just upset because I think, 2 days ago maybe, I was talking with Gore on the desk, and I was calling for the Scratless. You know, I want to see the Scream Atlas.
We're doing that.
And we're not going to see it.
Nope.
I believe I also talked with you. I think I've been talking a lot about the Scratless, and we haven't been able to see it. They're not going to see it either. It's going to be the Athena, which still, incredible ganks, you know, good damage, good setup. If you dash in, taunt, and don't get a kill, you're probably dead late game, but I think just by nature of good tank stats that Athena gets, just when you spawn in as a Guardian, it does help out a little bit of that aggression. So I want to see Scream not really looking to fight unless he's got the number advantage, the dash taunts. Well, we'll be on point, I'm sure, and set up some of those brawls. But it's a fun pick, and I do think the ultimate late game really does start chunking. So I want to see some big Defender of Olympuses.
We'll have to see some big ones with the damage output that he could go in towards that tier 1 book for his first item, along with the Bumba's Dagger. Bluestone, actually the call for Pegon in mid. Maybe the most kind of questionable at it. And it's weird saying that that's the most questionable thing out of everything that's in front of us right now on the screen. But when we've been seeing these assassin mids come from these players, it's typically been coupled with something like Tainted Steel or maybe even like a Warrior's Axe, like a Venenu has gone. Bluestone kind of seems a little questionable to me, Charlie.
Tells me Pegon's confident. He wants damage. He doesn't care about Warrior's Axe. He's saying, what damage? You know, what do I need protections for? Doesn't mean it's true. There certainly could be some follow-up there. I just think that if you're prioritizing the Bluestone rather than the Sundering Axe late game or the Hero's Axe, you know, you're going for full raw DPS, and also it helps with the early clear, which I think Pegon might need a little bit of help with because of how much early pressure a set can have with those skewers, things like that. So that's going to start to add up. Unfortunately for Pegon, his red buff is going to be taken away here by LASBRA. Either he knows it or he doesn't care, because it's not like he can go over there anyways. It takes a while for Susano to clear the wave. And also, LASBRA's going to be able to take away the purple buff in the meantime. So Scream was able to invade. That's about it, though. Looks like LASBRA's going to make sure that he is going on point with taking the left side buffs. And Scream can just do what he wants over on the right side of the map.
Yeah, Scream will get his speed buff, but purple buff for his team now removed. Pegon will walk back and sadly realize his red's been stolen away. We'll have to settle for at least dropping the green buff for now. Giving Scream a both of them had that. Both of them did the exact thing where it's like, all right, cool, you got it right. Yep, and they both walked out and went, oh, I thought you had it.
We're both melee like assassin types at this point. Someone's got to pull the buff in that case. Athena does have those ranged autos, but you can't really pull the buff from a distance like that,
Yeah.
so unfortunate. And we do see a little bit of a grouping on the right side of the map. Lazarus possibly looking to get aggressive. Whereas Awesome Jake has been getting aggressive on the Maui as well. These stuns into the pole have been nice, but BaRRaCCuDDa hasn't really been able to find too much follow-up. That's what I've been waiting for, the pull into the heart bomb. PandaCat does have the beads, is not going to use it though.
Yeah, it's a nice easy setup for Jake and BaRRaCCuDDa in that regard. And now, second time this entire weekend through a best of 3 that the Bolts played, a best of 5, and now another best of 5. This is only the second time that we have seen BaRRaCCuDDa stray away from the Danzaburou that was starting to really kind of pick up the pace in the last couple of sets that he had been playing through there. Well, let's see if he remembers how to play the Cupid. A dive onto Scream. The Bolts are having absolutely none of the shenanigans of the Jade Dragons. They've now gotten their first kill of the game. First blood to the mid laner.
Yeah, and putting it on a set, that's a good look, because Ven wants to get that Transcendence stacked up as quickly as possible. Pegon going to return some damage, but realizes Awesome Jake is here and does not want to step up any further. Something to note, horrific blink blink on the side for Scream, Pegon, and PBM, so all of Jake's CC is very true. It's going to be difficult to try and avoid it once you get pulled in by the Maui. There's going to be a lot of follow-up. Looks like Pegon wanted to go for the Defender of Olympus burst combo there, but missed the pull, and Ven was able to get out of trouble before any more damage came through. But those are the kind of plays I do want to see with the Athena, right? I'm like big pull in, chase down the Typhoon, and then Defender of Olympus just slamming once that Book of Thoth gets started up. Still hasn't though. Scream hasn't been able to find that much farm just yet.
Kind of gives me remnants of the old like Loki Athena combo.
Yep.
Like you go stealth, Athena ults onto you, and right as she's about to pop through, you ult on top of them, and you get just a double dunk of damage through. But now Venenu going to try and return the favor. Doesn't take down Pegon this time. But Blink is down for Pegon. He's got to be wary of that because LASBRA, at any point, who has already gotten infinitely more active this game than he did back in game number 3.
That's the second time they've done that.
Just walked up and took that slowly. Like,
I mean, that's the thing. Mike was tanking, dashed away. Scream was like, don't worry, I got it. And then was like, oh, like it didn't come right to me. It was far away. It was just like the green buff. It was a tank situation. And LASBRA said, well, I enjoy greater scorpions. I'm going to walk up and steal that one.
I'm a greater scorpion connoisseur myself.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a stealer of greater scorpions. That's going to be some extra gold in the pocket of the Olympus Bolts, who already have a 1K gold lead. That is going to be nice. Probably setting up for a Pyromancer here in about 4 minutes. That's usually when you got a lead like this what you want to set up for and look towards. But I've been keeping my eyes on Awesome Jake as well. Looks like he's hanging around the mid lane, realizing that Pegon doesn't have beads, and that Susano could be a good target for some aggression.
Jake wanting to set up, but there's nobody around him to really follow on anything that he could throw out there, whether he hooks somebody or jumps in with that stun. Still has about another 5 to 6 levels on a couple of these players. Nearly grabs Pegon there with the ultimate. That landfall just a little slow. Pegon maybe just a little too quick with that jet stream to get out.
Yeah, that's one of those situations that's real difficult because Pegon doesn't have the blink, so he has to use the Typhoon to get out in that situation. But you waste your ultimate, not going to be the biggest deal in the world. Awesome Jake will just stall until it's back up again. Purple buff is stolen away, but Scream, on the way, the Defender of Olympus wants to chase this one down.
Now 3 onto Jake, who doesn't have ult, does have the swing, jumps right back on top of Scream, who gets pulled back in, but a stun from LASBRA's tether, but a yank back in by Mike. Could be a turnaround of 2 kills. Jake and Laz are both gone. fineokay's rotation in off of a teleport to jump back over. Puts 2 kills up for the Jade Dragons and evens the scoreboard.
That was massive. There was no way they had that chase down if fineokay is not there. That is a huge teleport, and he gets 2 kills for it, so certainly worth it as well for fineokay. Not only did his team need that, he needed it for rotating over so early. And Baskin stuck around, so maybe Baskin can go for an opportunity here to find Pegon. Chose the right direction to escape. No beads available, so the Pillar of Agony could be trouble, but Pegon going into the jungle as opposed to down the tower, made sure Baskin couldn't catch him out. Either way, that's pretty massive. I mean, still gold lead in favor of the Olympus Bolts, but the Jade Dragons were able to answer back.
No, Peg, well, he's out. I guess that's the good news for Pegon, is he is out. He is living through this no beads, no Aegis early game so far. But it is narrow margins that he's escaping every single time that he has. Awesome Jake charging up the hook. We're not going to throw that one out there. I got to give credit to Pegon. The fact that he has lived his first 8 levels without dying, despite all the CC and all the abilities thrown his way to try and lock him down, he's been able to make it through.
Yeah, in the last game, he went relatively untouched. That has not been the case. The Olympus Bolts have been putting a lot of pressure towards this assassin in the mid lane, especially because of the relic he started with, but some quick jukes as well as Typhoons and just using that jet stream to get out of trouble has been able to make sure that Pegon hasn't fallen yet. Not for lack of trying though. The Olympus Bolts are not ones to sit back. They're not going to let the aggression from the Jade Dragons stifle them. They are still trying to fight whenever possible. I believe Kingslayer was used there, Ven. A little bit of a waste. Didn't have an opportunity to close gap, and Pegon once again just fine. Gets the ultimate down from Ven for free.
Yep, Venenu going to be sitting without that ult for another 90 seconds until he can utilize that one. So Pegon resting on that thought, knowing that he should be safe from a hyper-aggressive Venenu, though we have been seeing the Bolts get aggressive regardless. Like to see maybe LASBRA try and make another rotation in, put some extra pressure towards Pegon, because as of recent, it's really only been Ven. Jake hasn't been able to find and ultimate just yet to pick somebody back up. Has only thrown the one out towards Pegon, missing out. Instead, it's PBM to start up, trying to disrupt Awesome Jake just a little bit.
And that's the issue with Maui. You're not going to be the first one into the fight unless escapes are down, relics are down, blinks are down, that sort of thing. It's a very telegraphed ultimate in that. As long as you're paying attention and you can see Maui and he's not coming over a wall or something, you can usually avoid that ultimate, or at the very least sidestep it. And Pegon's been doing that consistently, so Awesome Jake hasn't been able to hold on to it, has been waiting to see maybe if the pull will come in first or something like that. And I think you're right, LASBRA is who I'm looking to as well, as a target who probably should be looking to find some just aggressive play, some blinks in, something along those lines. But it looks like just going for farm. Feels like late game, the Osiris is going to do more than the Athena, and he's just going to stay back and try and play for it. And I'm not so sure he's right. I mean, Athena definitely, DPS-wise, gets out damaged by the Osiris, but the setup that you can have, especially with the amount of damage that the Jade Dragons have in the back, could be disastrous if Scream gets the late game as well.
Yeah, definitely don't want this Athena going unchecked through. So far has been the only 2 deaths that the Jade Dragons have lost so far. But 2 kills to fineokay to try and mitigate some of that in the solo lane. Kind of just been quiet on the right side of the map. Haven't really taken a look over to what's going on there because, well, the only action that we saw from a solo laner was when fineokay came to the left side of the map to pick up those 2 kills. And Jake pulled back again, slowed down by PBM, but will be just fine. Still charging up that hook. Wants to maybe steal the scepter away. Grabs PandaCat, but PandaCat will still be able to get the scepter of his own. And the Jade Dragons, even despite those 2 kills that fineokay built for himself, still about 1,000 gold or so up for the Olympus Bolts.
Yeah, and that's what I've been wondering, because Pyromancer spawned in about, a minute 45 seconds ago, and I think both teams have some decent opportunity to pull the Olympus Bolts, just because Ven and LASBRA have a good amount of pressure on this side, but more specifically, the Jade Dragons, because fineokay on this Ama can tank it up for days. He's got plenty of attack speed, the death toll, and the Ama passive just make sure that objective drops extremely quick. But it seems to me that the Jade Dragons aren't in a hurry to take any fair fights. They can find some skirmishes, where Scream rotates in or ults in this case, and makes the numbers a bit unfair. They're down to fight, but finally, the Pyromancer is going to be looked at here. LASBRA starting it up, but Scream and PBM, they're already here.
Well, see if fineokay can rotate in. Pyromancer leashed by the Olympus Bolts. They're not going to make a commit to that because of how many people from the Dragons are still standing by. Baskin will full clear out his wave nearly. fineokay still just farming up himself. Interested to see when we'll start to see a little bit more activism from these solo laners. We saw fineokay's rotation earlier, netted the Dragons 2 big kills to bring themselves back in this game. But ever since then, it has been dead quiet for the solo laners. I gotta imagine that's when we'll start seeing kind of the first real fight around some of these objectives.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, BaRRA has been really pushed up, which has hurt him in the past on the Danza and things like that, but Scream hasn't been on the left side of the map too much. I mean, BaRRA's been at the tower line consistently, just being a menace, trying to get pressure over PandaCat. And I keep having my eyes on Scream's ult, wondering is he going to try and chase down, but BaRRA's got both relics up consistently. Fields of Love is going to put a damper on that dash taunt that Scream would like to go for, so doesn't seem like he's going to be getting baited anytime soon. But the skirmish around the Pyromancer continues. Not an actual brawl. They're sort of just checking each other. PBM goes in for a dash. Jake just goes in for a pull. Nothing's stuck just yet. No relics are being pulled. We're just going to be dancing for a little bit longer.
Well, fineokay takes away the mini XP camp for what value it's worth. Baskin will put a little bit of poke back towards him to answer towards the aggression that fineokay has put in the jungle at least. But finally the Bolts start pulling towards the Pyromancer. Sends out the AoE of it. Beam goes through. Scream finds a triple taunt. Sets up for a Typhoon onto Venenu. The Olympus Bolts still get the Pyro. But can they even get out of this one? Venenu cannot. Good jet stream connects through. LASBRA over the wall. Pulled back by PBM. Slowed down. Forced out of the beads. And fineokay is not able to get the ultimate, but a good taunt in by Scream once again. Sets up for a second kill.
Wow, that was, just well played by the Jade Dragons, but it seemed like the Olympus Bolts misplayed pretty hard. LASBRA ults out. Unfortunately, the chase down was there. I don't think there was much he can do about it. But more specifically, Ven was trying to hold onto that teleport until Pegon used the actual jet stream and closed gap, but never actually teleported to any of the set clones. And then Jake used the landfall afterwards to try and get aggressive, was off the mark, could not pull Pegon back in. I mean, all of this lead that the Olympus Bolts have built up, and that fight was not what you want to see at the end of an engagement like that. Still, the gold in their favor the slightest bit for the time being, and losing Pyromancer is not the end of the world. But if that's the best look at the Bolts team fight, I'm thinking you got to have a full-on reset. Maybe when Baskin and BaRRaCCuDDa rotate in, it could go a little bit better, because this Cupid has built up quite the lead. I'd say about a level and a half. I mean, Bear was level 15 before that wave even went through, and PandaCat is still sitting at level 14. It's gonna take a bit before he's able to catch up. So fighting around this Cupid ult could be the call here for the Olympus Bolts.
Bolts were able to grab the objective, but the Jade Dragons found the team fight after, and that has closed up the gold lead that the Olympus Bolts had earlier on, now only a couple hundred, separating these two teams to the 15-minute mark. Might as well call it dead even in that regard. Levels bouncing back and forth between the squads, about a half level up for PBM, about a level for fineokay over Baskin, and BaRRaCCuDDa with his 1 on top of PandaCat in that regard. So fairly even in that right. Now sets up for a Gold Fury for the Jade Dragons. This one is now being contested by the Bolts much. A pullback, landfall grabs fineokay. The Bolts take the Gold Fury, but can they get out of the fight as they have started? Awesome Jake, the first casualty for the Bolts. Baskin locks in 2, BaRRaCCuDDa wailing away with the autos, and a heart bomb detonates to take down PandaCat. PBM falls down as well. That is 3 gone with a double for Ven.
Yeah, so it turns out when Baskin and Barra show up to the fight, it does look a lot cleaner. That was a huge pillar of agony from this Hades, as well as Ven goes massive in the mid lane with that Kingslayer ultimate. Scream is taking a little bit of damage here, but still dishing some back to Ven and Barra. Not gonna let that tower go without a fight, but fineokay does have the rotation in. Will he have enough damage to one-shot Ven through that silence? No. Beautiful teleport away to make sure that that set's going to be just fine. But the Olympus Bolts, again, when the grouping comes through, when Barra and Baskin show up to play, that fight looked a lot cleaner. And the pull that the Jade Dragons seemed like they wanted was not able to confirm that objective. They got awesome Jake, but lost way more in return.
That's what happens when all your mobility is down and Baskin just gets to free farm you with a Pillar of Agony. Lockdown 2 for BaRRaCCuDDa to just wail away. Auto after auto, a heart bomb to follow up with it. Sets up for a double for Venenu during that fight. 3-1-1 now on the set mid for the Olympus Bolts. And that lead that the Bolts had earlier is now back, plus some. 2,500 gold, 1,300 experience to the order side team.
Yeah, but that Ama still is looking spooky. I mean, fineokay's 3-0, highest XP in the game. Barra just ticked over to level 17, while fineokay's been it for a bit now. So, not the end of the world. I mean, an Amaterasu still can do a ton of damage, and I think the Dazzling Defense was a tool that the Olympus Bolts don't want to be hit by too many times, but fineokay is still having plenty of golden XP over the opposition. I mean, Baskin is trying, and I think is still doing plenty of damage. I mean, if he can hit an ult like that, who cares about levels, right? If you get a Pillar of Agony like that every fight, who's going to care at the speed at which you farm? Some eyes have to be towards fineokay, though. That bounty would do whoever could get that kill some justice there and some help with their build. I think trying to get some extra DPS.
Would certainly be good for whoever can get that bounty on a fineokay. If anybody can get that bounty.
He's too quick.
Onto fineokay. He is a fast man on this Amaterasu. And also just a ton of extra damage that he can provide and some CC towards his squad. For now, though, the Jade Dragons will have to rest on the fact that there's nothing up on the map just yet. Predator Scorpion will be taken for the Dragons, but Pyromancer are about to respawn. And it's the Olympus Bolts who could set up the offensive position around. I mean, Jake is already blocking off one path. Scream rotating in towards mid. Could see a small brawl break out, but does not seem that Pegon is too interested in that.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a wave underneath for BaRRaCCuDDa, and it seemed like PandaCat was going to make the rotation over. He has made it sort of halfway over for some mid camps, but looks like not the full-on rotation. And actually, Pegon is going to sit over in duo lane, possibly looking for the fight with BaRRaCCuDDa. He's sitting at the wave. I don't know how long he's going to stay here, but with red buff, with Hydras, this could be bad. I mean, Bear's got both relics. I'm kind of interested to see the scrap, but it looks like Bear's onto him, and it's just not going to step up. He's just going to waste Pegon's time. I suppose that's the better idea.
He's sitting there going, all right, I think PandaCat just showed himself in mid. This wave isn't being pushed up. I haven't seen Pegon in a while. What's going on here?
Bear is not leaving that tower.
No, Bear said, I'm just gonna wait around and let my team do some of the heavy lifting across. He's still there. He hasn't left. Finally, Pegon walks in and Bear goes, ah, yes, I knew something was up. I calculated this. I knew all along.
Yeah, he stepped over the ward, but I assumed after like a minute, Bear would be like, all right, he's probably gone, it looks like. Pull back in, onto Scream, just for the sake of it. Not too much damage coming through. fineokay, however, is going to take that damage.
Yank back in onto fineokay by that passive from Jake, but not going to be too much. fineokay will be down to about half HP. Should sustain a little bit just by swapping between his speed stance and his power stance. This is the ultimate like showdown on this left
game of
side.
chicken.
It's the ultimate game of chicken.
I mean,
between Bear and Pegon, but with Venenu here, oh, that ward disappeared. Pegon might not know that the mid laner of his opposing mid laner's even rotated now.
I love that Pegon's this confident though, because BaRRaCCuDDa's level 19, both relics up, Fields of Love, there's a lot of tools. And Pegon's like level 17, has 3 items to his name. He's like, I want this fight. Now, Scream is on the way as well. I was gonna say, BaRRa's playing so safe when he knew Pegon was there. You gotta imagine when he doesn't know who else is there, that he's gonna back up. But that Primal Fury has spawned in, and PandaCat waiting to go for the pull, but that's immediately spotted out. Ven drop a set clone just to keep some vision on the objective, as it looks like Panda wants to go for that play, but both solo laners have already made it in. This is a true 5v5 fight.
We'll see where the superior team fight lies. Frenzy pop for the Fury. The Jade Dragons get it. They might have to sacrifice Scream in order to get there, but with no ult by Jake, that means no yank back. That could have been a perfect opportunity for the Maui ultimate. But the Jade Dragons will, without any contest, be able to grab the Fury for themselves.
Yeah, they only lost beads on Scream. That was pretty much it. The Olympus Bolts showed up. They knew what was happening. They saw Frenzy get popped, and they're like, nah, we can't get in there. Let's just back it up at this point, right? The steal potential was not there. And I think with Pegon's ultimate, if they grouped up and went for the steal too hard, the Typhoon could have been disastrous. So probably a smart call. The chase down after would have been nice, but as you said, Jake just could not close gap and find that landfall, could not find that massive pull for the rest of the team to find some follow-up. I think that the Jade Dragons are pretty happy with trying to ease up a bit of that gold lead, and we're at Fire Giant territory now, J-Mac. It's 22 minutes into the game. All neutral objectives are down except for FG. I don't imagine that these ADCs are going to sit around left lane much longer. I mean, PandaCat cleared the wave, channeled the back, was able to tick over to level 20, and probably just wants to either finish up that Silver Branch or go for the start, and it looks like Silver Branch is going to be the call. Doesn't have enough gold, but BaRRaCCuDDa, he just went for the Death's Temper. He's going for as much attack speed as possible.
Yeah, get a little bit of extra bang for your buck with that starter item. Awesome, Jake. Every time we peek over to a Maui player, I see them charging up that first ability. It almost feels like a kind of like a sonic boom in a sense in that regard, but Landfall will pull PandaCat, but unfortunately Jake is in the middle of 5, able to rope swing on out. Baskin is there. The root sprint to lockdown 1. fineokay closing the gap in with Scream, but the Fields of Love might not be enough. Look
what a
at
teleport.
the tiny HP bars by the remainder of the Bolts. Everybody just barely able to get out, but LASBRA going back in, taunted, and beads now gone.
Yeah, and LASBRA is trying to do a bit of damage before this Fire Giant pull. That was a beautiful mystical Alua that made sure that Baskin was able to teleport out of that fight, but it's got to be a regrouping here because Fire Giant is going down quick. No one from the Bolts can step in. It's going to be down, and now LASBRA has to try and run away.
LASBRA ult out, and all 5 of the Jade Dragons with fire. The team that was just a few thousand gold behind earlier have snuck away 1 Fury, and now a Fire Giant right under the noses of the Olympus Bolts, pushing them back and evening out this game once again. And take a look at the relic situation between them. Look at the massive cooldown timers, almost even as far as these beads are concerned by the Olympus Bolts. Almost 2 minutes a pop on everybody before that relic is back up.
Yeah, so probably, all reliable. Whenever you see the Jade Dragons group up and go left, the Bolts should probably group up and go right. Look to get level 20, look to get some starter item upgrades. I think the Phoenix defense of the Bolts is going to be decent, right? They have plenty of opportunities to say, hey, you can't step in. We have Fields of Love, we have Pillars of Agony, even the landfall from Maui. Could be deadly if the Jade Dragons are sticking around too long without relics, but so far, that's not going to be the biggest worry. Horrific and Frenzy should be up soon for PBM, and after that, you'll have just about every team fight relic you could want. But fineokay is on the way. I was wondering if the Olympus Bolts were going to run, and with Defender of Olympus channeled, it looks like that was the call. BaRRaCCuDDa and Awesome Jake were a little bit smart and decided to back up. They're not farming, though. They are just sitting underneath the tower, maybe trying to fight for the tier 2. It looks like they're not trying to split too much, but LASBRA and Ven are certainly not here. They're in mid lane currently, trying to get some extra waves.
We'll see if a rotation comes in. Scream with this poly is able to channel ability, throw a poly, reach shot, slam down this tower. Venenu now on the way back. LASBRA stopped his for just a moment. Trebuchet is here for the Bolts to act as a secondary, or I should say maybe like a 6th man for them. They're going to leave it away for the time being. There's a lot of structures on the map for the Dragons to take with this Fire Giant. They start with 2 and left. Will make their way down mid to drop those 2.
Yeah, they certainly have a lot of time to do it. They're 2 minutes or so with this Fire Giant buff. It looks like tier 2 tower is the grouping now. Checking for LASBRA, smart call. You know, he could be around there somewhere. Currently just getting back camps at the moment, so maybe not looking for a brawl. But I think just testing the waters, Scream could always just dash in and look for that taunt opportunity, or blink, but Maui's gonna use the ultimate.
Gotta pull in Mike, double stun onto the front line. Fields of Love locks away 2, but Mike is fine. fineokay is fine. It's Venenu who's the one in danger. Sprout activated, but it's not gonna slow anything down. fineokay drops. LASBRA on the run, but it's a double for the Athena jungle out of Scream. Pegon against Baskin. Good taunt by Scream, but not enough. Baskin turns that one back around. That is a 3 for 2, and the heal from Baskin, not enough. Only LASBRA left alive for the Bolts.
Yeah, LASBRA up against 3. Definitely going to be hard to defend the Phoenix and maybe even the Titan after. Take a look at those respawn timers. It's going to be a bit. Not too many minions, but also LASBRA does not have beads. 1 bit of CC could be the end of his life and the end of this game.
LASBRA's got to put on a soul defense. Up against 3. Blink in by Scream. Taunt onto LASBRA. Thrown to PandaCat. And the Jade Dragons, they're not going to let this one go to 5 with the few minions they've got and all the power in the world. They will be your number 3 seed going to the SMITE World Championships.
Wow, what a game. I mean, 27 minutes. You'd think 1 bird would not be enough, but they had plenty of defense, and their tanks were able to tank that Titan long enough for PandaCat to do the finishing blow. I mean, the farm was so clean. It seemed like trying to punish that Susano just didn't work out for them. Pegon got out so many times. The Olympus Bolts had a clear target. They just couldn't catch him.
Now, the Olympus Bolts tried. I mean, early game, you saw the advantage that they had tried to push through, get Venenu up a little bit early, get LASBRA active and early through, and they did just that. But it felt like they hit a brick wall when fineokay made his rotation over, got that early double kill. It just felt like that killed all the momentum of the Bolts.
And it seemed a little puzzling as well was when they walked up to Fury, they realized what was happening, they realized it was going on, didn't really try and fight, didn't really try and chase, Pyromancer then as well, and the Bolts were like, wait, we're ahead, why are we so scared? I'm not sure, but the Jade Dragons didn't care.
Seems the Jade Dragons just put the fear of God into the Olympus Bolts, and it's the Jade Dragons who will be your 3rd seed for the SWC. Olympus Bolts, they still made it to SWC, but they'll be your 4th seed moving through here. Congrats to the Dragons. That's it for me and Charlie. We'll throw it over to the desk to keep it going.
Now, the Dragons give the Bolts a tough time here in game number 4. Periods of that where it feels like game 5 is just on the horizon. Feels like we are going to strap in for the long haul, right? 10 total games today. Unfortunately for the Bolts, they fall just a little shy there. And Mifflin, again, watching this team kind of rallied together, right? I mean, you hear the casters talking about it, having the Bolts with a small lead, being able to potentially try and extend that. And the Dragons just not really caring about it is maybe one of the most in-character Dragons traits that I've ever heard in a game.
Yeah, I mean, I loved everything about that match. It was really back and forth with the early portions. The game maintained like a 5-5 state for a good amount of time. But then finally that massive team fight around the Fire Giant where the Jade Dragons were able to push back the Olympus Bolts. And I mean push them back. Didn't quite get a kill, but TKO is pretty valuable that late into the game. Nets them the Fire Giant. But I want to highlight individual players as well. Scream on this Athena, I thought was a large departure from the standard from him. He wasn't going for the, hey, I'm Scream, I'm Sprack, with a Sprack all over him, that egotistical play that we've come to associate with him. Just get in there, do your own thing, play that as that solo agent instead. He really dialed it back. He was acting as a facilitator for his team, a lot of peel situations as well. Communication, very clean, reinitiations at that. So the Athena play and the adaptability of Scream out of the jungle, I think, deserves every bit of praise, as well as the fact that maybe not as impressive like in what it accomplished, but Pegon survives the early game with no beads or Aegis as a Susano in mid. That's not very easy to do, especially up against this aggressive composition from the Olympus Bolts.
Well, now they are 7-3 against the Bolts this year. You're going to the World Championship as the 3rd seed, right? And again, to highlight that, 1st, 2nd seed get to choose in order out of 4 teams for 1st, out of 3 teams for 2nd, out of 2 teams here now for 3rd. So still some room for the Dragons to get a matchup that's going to be favorable. Also, though, does put them, I believe, now on the side of the bracket with the Kings, which is going to be an interesting one. Actually, might be on the other side. I can't even remember. Oh, you know what? We'll be able to look
Mike's
at that
looking
and
like
break
he
that one
knows.
down. You know what? Honestly, Mike probably knows. So instead of listening to me babble on about it, we can go over to Mike for the interview.
Babylonian. But y'all didn't play any of the. Oh, no, y'all did. Y'all had Ishtar. So you had at least one Babylonian god there. Anyways, sitting by with PBM post-game interview. First off, Mike, congrats on being able to get the win, locking in that 3rd seed for yourself. I mean, this one going for 3rd and 4th, it was kind of just the difference between getting to pick between the final 2 opponents for yourself and the ones that come in later in January versus kind of having to wait. Do you think that's still real important, being able to have that distinction of picking between at least a couple of opponents?
I mean, it's slightly better, but at the end of the day, I don't really care who I play in the tournament. You just have to, be hot at the right time and just have a good weekend. So whoever we play, I'm cool with.
Yeah, for sure with that. Now, going to that 3rd seed, I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, we'll have more concrete answers as it goes through, but I believe I'll be playing against the Atlantis Leviathans, who had lost down to there. Do you think that that's maybe a better matchup for you potentially as a semifinal as compared to maybe having to go against the Camelot Kings?
Both teams are trash, all frauds. We just had a horrible tournament, so I don't know. If we do that, then we're finishing 8th. We're losing quarters. If we play better, everybody just absolutely sucks. I mean, I'm watching Shinto miss 3 dodgy chains and hit the server. Like, it's a rough one, man.
Well, it seems like you're having a little bit of fun here today. Unfortunately for you, only had fineokay. I think we saw a clip that got put over on the Twitter. Was just you and fineokay. You're moving some chairs around. How's it gonna feel once you can have at least the full team kind of back with you in full force?
Dude, I'm not gonna lie. Alec and I were so deflated all weekend. It feels so weird to be in there alone, and just all the circumstances, unfortunately, with the boys being sick. So Alec and I definitely are looking forward to having that energy back, playing in front of a crowd. I am so pumped. I'm so happy to be back live, see all the fans, get in there. Oh my God, I'm gonna invade too. Let's go, dude. Oh, it's gonna be awesome.
Seems like you, PBM and the rest of the crowd should be pumped up. If you're a Dragons fan, be ready for the invades. Be ready for the energy. We'll see you at SWC, and we'll throw it back over to Des to close it out.
So what I got out of there was, it was not a great weekend for the Dragons, self-admitted. Everyone sucks. Mike's gonna invade you at Worlds, and you don't have a choice about it. It's gonna be, man, it's gonna be a fun event. I can't believe the 4 teams that we watched today, the 4 teams that showed up. We're not going to see them for another month, a little over it, month and a week before they get to play again. All in the quarterfinals again, waiting for their opponents who we're going to start sorting through. We've got the Titans, the Warriors, the Scarabs, the Valkyries, and 4 TBD semi-pro teams coming from the SCC or the SOC that are going to be playing over the next couple of weeks. And Mifflin, you got to imagine that if this is a Dragons that don't consider themselves at full force, this is a Dragons that consider themselves as having a bad weekend, I don't want to be any of those teams coming out of the group stage that gets matched up against them.
I don't know. I might choose to be the Camelot Kings if I could choose to be any team right now. I mean, they won.
True. Yeah. Okay. There you go.
Look, Mike says what everyone wants to say, right? The freedom of being a player as opposed to a caster must be so beautiful. Being able to say whatever he wants, man. Shooting shots at Shinto like that, absolutely
And
wild.
apparently Shinto's shooting shots and missing.
Yeah, he's shooting
according
it
to
air.
Mike.
Oh,
I'm simply quoting. That is not.
Yeah, that is a direct Michael Heiss quote. Okay, that's got nothing to do with us on the desk.
4-1 and 3. I didn't know where to go with that one. 4-1 and 3 there for PandaCat. 3-1 and 4 for fineokay. You had mentioned it, 7 assists picked up for Scream. And it's just a honestly kind of surprising, but very Dragons anyway draft that comes through. Pegon playing the Susano. Not a ton of damage, actually outdamaged by Venenu, but still able to be on the winning squad. Scream you had highlighted as being a very high impact in terms of setup. And the Athena jungle, something that if he was playing, it's the Cherio special. If he's coaching, it's still the Cherio special. It's just Scream embodying him for a moment and being the, what is that called? Like when a god has
Avatar.
an avatar. It's the avatar.
I'm helping out today.
Yeah, you're really helping me out. I don't know why I'm blanking. Some of these words aren't even like complex. I just don't remember them.
I don't use them often.
Yeah, well, how often am I talking about the avatar of a god? I guess if I'm talking about like
you say
Rom,
Avatar a lot, actually.
Well, am I talking about like the Last Airbender skins
Yeah.
in Smite? You can
Skins
play
in
as?
Smite. Make sure you purchase those.
Or am I ranting about how I dislike the movie?
You didn't like James Cameron's Avatar?
Tell me 2 of the main characters' names right now.
Blue 1 and 2.
Okay, exactly, and that is why I'm not a big fan of that one. Instead, we're all big fans of what we saw today, a 5-game set between the Kings and the Leviathans. The Kings coming out on top, and then right here, 4 games between the Dragons and the Bolts. And the Dragons come out. So your first seed Kings, second seed Levi's, third Dragons, and Bolts going in as 4th. Of course, again, the power of choice going into Worlds. You will not see these teams for a little while. Kings get the choice of 4 teams out of the group stages, 3 for Levi's, 2, 1 as we go down the seeding. A lot of fun that is going to be shaking out. And that is not the end of the Smite Fest at this point that we have going on in December. Road to Worlds kicked off through Phase 3, but definitely here, Phase 3 playoffs, where we get the first 4 teams. The next week, from the 8th to the 11th, we're going to be taking the top 2 semi-pro teams from Europe and putting them in the qualifier group stage. And then the week after that, the 15th to the 18th, we're going to take the top 2 semi-pro teams from North America and move them onto the group stage. That'll give us the 8 total teams, joining the Scarabs, the Valkyries, the Titans, and the Warriors. They'll play January 5th through 8th to find the last 4 going to Worlds. And then January 13th through 15th, live from the Esports Arena in Arlington, Texas. It'll be the Smite World Championship. An 8-team single elimination tournament. Crowd there, you could hear it. Mike's amped for it, Mifflin. It feels weird. The season's closing out, and yet there's so much to look forward to.
So much Smite coming up,
There's
too. It's a
lot
lot of
Smite. If I remember correctly, 15 sets
Yep.
across, or for both weeks, so 8th through 11th and 15th through 18th. So 30 sets of Smite over the
Some
next
of those
2
are
weeks.
best of 5, I believe, as well.
Are they?
I
thought they
think-
were all best of 3. At the minimum,
At
you're
minimum
getting
30.
60 games
Yeah, but-
total
Yep.
across 2 weeks. Maximum, I don't want to do that math. It's going to be a lot of Smite here still left in December. And then coming into January, right? Very competitive. Worlds right there. And that's the thing that the 2 weeks are going to blur by because that's all I'm thinking about right now is the end of, or not even the end of the month, the middle of next month and just a little bit away. Man, I'm really excited for Worlds. We have so much to get through before then, but I'm really excited for Worlds. And of course, with these 4 teams now qualified and seeded, it is going to be a very, very fun event. Out of all of it, do you have like a specific team? Actually, you know what? I'm going to ask you a better question. We're talking about the semi-pro teams. Which of them do you think has the best opportunity to upset an SPL team potentially going into the group stage?
Hex Mambo.
Hex Mambo.
It's not even particularly close. It's Hex Mambo.
Yeah, good point.
And then it's like 3 ticks down as somebody else. I won't name names.
Yeah.
Everybody else.
And then everyone else. Yeah, Hex Mambo, admittedly, I think in the Hounds as well, did knock out Hounds, I believe, in Masters 1, Hex Mambo in Masters 2, an SPL team. The Scarabs, unfortunate for them that they fell short there. And so a lot of fun questions, Mifflin, I think, moving forward. And all of it's going to be answered. I mean, again, it's a lot of Smite, double Elim, group stage, a lot of stuff that's going on between them. Thursday, I believe at 11 a.m., we'll be going live 4 best of 3s in Europe. And
4 a day, every day.
4, well, except Sundays. Sundays will
Except
only
for
have 3.
Sundays. But that might be where the best of 5s are. If there are any best of 5s.
And so it's going to be, in my mind, something really fun. One thing we have that's going to be in store for you is a bracket that we'll get to look at. Again, a shakedown for potentially looking at, if you're curious, how these teams are not just seeded, because we can say numbers all day, but good visual representations as we start moving forward. And of course, showcasing how the path to the World Championship is going to work for these teams that qualify today. I mean, you're talking quarterfinals, I believe best of threes day one, best of fives the next 2 days. A lot of pressure to be able to perform, especially in front of a crowd. I mean, for some of these guys, they've never done it before.
Yeah, I mean, I've never casted
You've never
in front of
done it
I've never seen a fan, personally. I would love to. How long has it been? 3 years since our last
Been
live
a long
event.
time.
Man,
Me and Dave were casting Paladins. That's how long ago that was.
pretty cool, you know?
Oh, it was fun.
Yeah, the realm of the battleground. Battleground of the realm.
Oh, man.
There's a realm.
Paladins.
Realm of the gods.
Oh, my God. Something of the realm. Yeah. I can't
Champions of the realm.
That's exact. You nailed it. I cast it for years, and you got it first.
Let's go.
That actually makes me feel.
I'm a hi-rez shill. I love all of our games.
Actually, and I'm going to tell you, we have a lot of really fun games.
That's right.
Paladins, I will tell you, still one of my favorites to cast. It's just incredibly, incredibly fun. If you're looking for some of these brackets over the next couple of weeks, this is going to be Europe. This is what we're going into next for Europe. Starting at 11 a.m., Thursday through Sunday, the 8th through the 11th, Hex Mambo. Going to be playing personnel from the SOC. You'll see the Ferryman taking on the Wargs. This one, I believe, Group A that we'll be seeing. Then Group B, Ravens taking on Thunderhead, again from the SOC. Scorpions and Gladiators will be playing each other. You will be having a few teams eliminated from each group. I believe 2 teams eliminated from each group by the end of them, and then we start talking about elimination stage, as you can see up in the top right. That elimination stage suddenly becomes a conversation about who's going to Worlds. 2 teams out of the 8 you just saw show up are going to be the ones that make it there. Then if you look at North America, it's going to be the exact same deal the week later. And then you go a couple weeks for holiday break, come back, and 8 teams dwindles down to only 4, so we're not eliminating as many, but considering we're coming into the totality of it with, 24 total teams?
It's a lot of teams.
Going down to just 8
So many
is
teams.
going to be a huge deal for them. And I'm really excited for it again. Thursday starting at 11 a.m. Eastern, then Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern, Saturday, Sunday, you'll guess it, at 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll be finding the 2 semi-pro teams from Europe. We'll have to find that out next week. For right now, we've got the team seated. We got the first 4 going to Worlds. For myself, from Mifflin, it's been a beautiful day. Thanks from everyone here in production as well for tuning in with us the entire time. And we'll see you Thursdays for some more SMITE.
Oh, Jake Sully, that's it.